Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to day 3 of Real Archaeology. I got my hat. Put into the chat if you can hear me. You know, the first few times I live streamed, I had lots of problems with audio. It seems like I'm doing a lot better now, but I'm still paranoid. So someone tell me that you can hear me and see me just fine. We will have Frederick Trusohamn of Digging Up Ancient Aliens joining in about 12 minutes. And I thought I'd have a conversation with you all really briefly while we're waiting. All right, perfect. Thanks, Arendelle and the crew of the Fancy. So, what I want to know is, what have you guys seen from Real Archaeology? What's your favorite content you've seen? I'd love to know what you guys have seen and how it's gone and all this kind of stuff. How has Real Archaeology been for everybody? Have you gone and checked out other creators? I hope you've not only looked at my channel. There's so many awesome creators and podcasts and YouTubers and TikTokers and bloggers involved here. And so it would be good to know that, hey, what was your favorite? Tell me. Favorite. Come on. And let me boost up the website so that people can make sure you see the schedule for today, because I think that's important. Where's the website? Oh, I didn't want to show that. I want to show this. There we go. So we have a lot of cool stuff today. While I'm waiting for you to tell me what your favorite stuff was, let's check out what's happening today. Aha, are you watching the one on Petra, Arendelle? Yeah, because I'm going to have, yeah, I know, guys. I'm going to have Megan Perry, who's been leading the charge among archaeologists on the channel. We're going to record something this week and hopefully get something up soon so you can hear her perspective. She's one of the few that actually alerted to it. In fact, Matt Simpson told me that he heard first about this issue with Petra and Josh Gates from Megan Perry's tweets. So we'll get the real inside scoop on here very soon. I think Matt's video on it is phenomenal. It's just a ridiculous situation. Yeah, Ken Feder, he is hilarious. He is just, I met him over Zoom briefly before I went on Joe Rogan, and we just had such a conversation. He's just a character. I really like him a lot. I'm going to have him on again. We're going to do a recorded podcast at some point, so it'll be a little more put together and edited to really try to get out some of his stuff. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are finding some new people. I think that's the key of this. There's, you know, it's so easy to find all this fake stuff. This fake stuff, the cream should rise to the top. But in our stupid social media world, it's clear that it's not the cream that's rising to the top. It is this crappy pseudoscience conspiracy crap. And the goal here is to try to share all these other smaller channels, some larger ones, podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, blog, and everybody, to try to say, hey, we are here. We're doing this work. We're trying to get the word out. So let's get people to start checking us out. Let's see. Yeah, Holly was amazing. I learned a lot about that. I've not read her book. I need to check it out. And yeah, she does really cool stuff. Those shallograms are really, really cool, aren't they? They're like, and you know, she sent me the images, and the one with the labels of the ritual scene that was going on that I showed. I was sure it was carved. I had no idea that it was a natural ammonite that had eroded in that way, and then they assigned these meanings to the patterns there. I thought it was just really friggin' cool, just to learn that in the way that it's tough to, you can't see that as easily archaeologically, so it's just something tough to get across from an archaeological context where the objects don't speak to you. Yeah, Chris Stringer was fantastic. It was my first time talking with him. Maybe we were talking beforehand if we met when I was a kid, maybe briefly when he was visiting sites in France or something like that. But yeah, so it was my first time talking with him. It was really good. We're definitely doing something later on. One of my goals is to buy a second camera so that I can record in-person conversations. And since he's not too far away, it'd be really good to set up an in-person conversation with him and some other people that are nearer to me, because he's like a font of knowledge, and he's just so excited to share the cutting edge research with people online. And I mean, that's another big point I'm trying to get across. This is why I'm having on a lot of archaeologists and colleagues, not just YouTubers and stuff. My colleagues, we want to share this stuff. We really, really, really want to share archaeology with the public. And, we heard from Ken about that story where he was going to go work on that documentary, and they were just like, no, we only want you if you're going to, in a sense, lie about Atlantis. And it's just like, we are cut out of the conversation because producers and editors want stuff that isn't real. And they want to take stuff that's not real and call it real. And it's just like, this is total BS. And this is part of why we're doing this. This is part of why so much of my field is behind what I'm doing, because it's like, we need to figure out how to get ourselves and our narratives and our stories out there. We really, really do. Thank you, Kinkella. I saw your little short. I have a few agreements and disagreements. Everybody go check out the latest video that Andrew Kinkella has on his channel, Kinkella Teaches Archaeology. It talks about how archaeologists need to engage, what I was just talking about right here. In fact, it was fresh in my brain. And I do agree with him, but I disagree with him on a slight point. I think when we are having our words edited into something that has nothing to do with what we're saying, I think that's a problem, because then we're allowing ourselves to be misused. And that's an issue. It was actually one of the big reasons why I went on Joe Rogan, is I was confident I would not be edited out of context. I could say what I want to say, and I could be sure I could get my narrative across. And so that's the one thing I do disagree with you on. I think I don't have a problem going on a pseudo-archaeology show. I'm with you on that. But I want to make sure that what I'm saying is not going to it's not going to be published as saying something I'm not saying, right? And I see that as a danger with these editors that control the media. But Andrew, I think what you do is fantastic. I think the job you do, we got to do a collaboration at some point. I'll go on your show, you come on my show. I think that would be the next step forward, right? Because you've been doing this for a while, and I think your approach is just phenomenal. You're full of energy and information, and that's what matters. Everybody go subscribe to Kinkella Teaches Archaeology right now. And if you're not, by the way, I hope it came across on the website, if you're not following the Archaeology Podcast Network for wherever you get your podcasts, you should check them out, because there's a lot of really good podcasts on there by professionals and enthusiasts who are talking all kinds of real archaeology all the time. So please go check out the Archaeology Podcast Network. This entire event was done somewhat in collaboration with them, even if they're just a part of what we've been doing this weekend. Why am I wearing the hat inside? Go away. I like my hat. If you don't like my hat, shut up, and I'll kick you out of the live chat if you persist, okay? We're trying to have a real conversation here. We're adults, okay? We're not here to just troll. Will I do another Reddit AMA? Yeah, I'm sure I will at some point. I'm not planning on it right this second. I just did this one. But of course, yeah, I thought the questions were phenomenal. I still have some I wanted to answer. We'll see. Maybe when I'm done live streaming, I'll go back and take a few more, maybe while on air, after I chat with some people. So what else am I missing here? Yes, it's my style. Thank you, Noah. Yeah, I know. The papers are behind paywalls, Arundel, and that's a problem. Though less and less, but they're also behind a wall of jargon, which does require the training to understand a scholarly paper, the experience of how to read it, really. And so it's just different. Okay. 5-minute reality check about something specific. Yeah, so Ola, I'm thinking about doing something. I'm going to start live streaming more regularly, and I might have little segments like that within it. I'm still thinking through how to put it together. This is my first go around with this live streaming thing, so we're going to see how it goes. But I'm planning on doing some more. I can do it a little more casually. Where do you get a hat like this? I got this. This is my second one. We'll see Nathaniel on in a bit. Follow him on YouTube. This hat I got in a shop in London. It's my new one. Let me go get my old one, and then we'll let in Frederick. He's probably waiting for me in a sec. I'm just walking around my room. You can probably still hear me, because I got to keep you guys entertained with my voice, or else everybody's going to click away, and that's just going to suck. So, I'm just wandering around, getting my old hat. So this hat, Look, I always wear hats. My entire life, I've wore hats. When I was younger, it was a baseball cap. I'm from Philadelphia, so I was wearing Philadelphia Eagles, and Philadelphia Phillies hats mostly. And so, you know, that's what I wore. And, you know, once you hit about 30, it's sort of like, fuck, you need something a little more professional-ish. And so I went with this. This used to have much nicer shape. I got this in a market, an outdoor market in Santiago, Chile, when I was living there with Yoni for about a month back over 10 years ago. And we got it for, you know, it was a great find. And it really did well. It's waterproof, so it's good for Cardiff. But I've been wanting a new hat forever because, as you can see, it's getting quite floppy. But it's tough to find a good one. So just recently, a couple months ago, we found this one in a hat shop in London. It was very affordable. I think it was like 60 bucks, 50 bucks, something like that, and totally great. And it's good quality. It's not waterproof, though, so I still wear the other one when it's raining. Okay, I'm about to let in Frederick. So give me a quick second. Let's get on my new headset so I can wear the hat while doing this. Hello. Are you there? Can you hear me,
Hello?
Frederick? I can hear you. Ah, there you are. Let you into the stream. I sort of started a little early because I accidentally advertised it on YouTube early.
It's all right.
Wait a second. People should be able to hear you, but I don't know if they'll be able to see you. 1 second. Let's see. Where are you? You should be there. There is Frederick. Everybody say hi to Frederick. Wait a second. What happened? Where'd you go? You were there for a second. Wait a second. What is going on? There we go. Sorry, I broke the stuff for a second. So yeah, Frederick Trusohamn. How do I say your last name? I don't even know.
Trusohamn.
Trusohamn.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
everybody say hi to Frederick. He is the host and author and convener of Digging Up Ancient Aliens, which is a YouTube channel, a podcast, and a blog. And so he has been... How long have you been following Ancient Aliens for?
With this project since 2021, so it's been 3 years now, at least.
Okay. 3 years. I don't envy you. I guess that's about as long as I've been following this Atlantis jazz. So it's a similar length of time, yeah. So what got you into Ancient Aliens?
I mean, it kind of started with the whole COVID situation. Everybody was at home and wanted to provide good information, but I mean, I can't really do medical stuff since that's not my expertise. So I felt, well, what can I look into? And I used to listen to the podcast called Archaeological Fantasies that unfortunately stopped putting out new shows. It was with Sarah Heed and Jeb Card and Ken Fader that you had on this Friday. It was an amazing show. Unfortunately, it's no longer producing, but I felt I could pick up where they left off, but I wanted to do something myself. And I felt that I want to look into something and be open if it's real or not. And I kind of figured Ancient Alien is the most known, and maybe they are onto something. Let's see how they fare in all of this.
Wait. You're an archaeologist, though. You thought they might be onto something?
No, not really, but I mean, they've been on for 18
Giving them a little
seasons.
bit of at least paying attention to what they're saying in a serious way.
Yeah.
And testing it against the archaeological record. Yeah.
Yeah, basically. And I mean, they've been on for 18 seasons. There's millions of books, and with all that published, I felt that maybe this show is the show that would have the best evidence if there's any to find. And 73 episodes in, no aliens so far.
You know, I've never actually seen a full episode of Ancient Aliens. It's one reason why I don't address it very much, because I don't have any knowledge on it. And as I tell my colleagues, you need to do research into what you're addressing, because otherwise you're going to be a fool. And so, yeah, I've only seen like a couple half episodes while like waiting at a doctor's office or something like that. And so that's like all I've seen. So like, How does this work? How is this so popular? Do you think that people actually, do you think a lot of the people that watch it believe it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of believers out there. I mean, they have
Okay.
conferences, there's even a live tour. There is live tours, but there's a live show where they tour in the US currently. So you can go and see your favorite ancient alien promoters live in person. I'm not sure how they set up these talks, but I guess they have some panel and they answer questions and all of that. But yeah, there's a lot of strong believers in it.
Okay.
And I think it's as with the Lost Civilization crowd, it's the mystery that kind of draw and suck people into this to start with.
Of
And
course.
then they kind of get stuck in this rabbit hole where they just gets brainwashed in a sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly the problem is they start getting, and this is what I always, you heard me at QEDCon, I think, where I was explaining how part of the problem is this kind of information is more accessible
Yeah.
than an archaeological course at the university. It's not as that's so much more closed off and not as easily attainable for most people. So they see this on the History Channel or Netflix or whatever, YouTube, and it's just
Mm.
right there to click, and then boom, they're using a lot of facts as well as some not facts, but using a bit of both. And yeah, it's just that's what we're up against is that accessibility, and we have to really push back.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, they have good production values in it. They have animations and they know how to captivate the audience. They kind of suck you in with a type of shotgun approach. They kind
Hmm.
of just blast you with thousands of claims, images, and connections, and then everything is well produced, and you don't really have time to think about it. You hear a claim, but they already moved on to next claim. Oh, see, here we have pyramids in China that looks exactly like those in Giza and looked exactly like those in South America or in Mexico, and everything is together. And if you kind of sit there and kind of get these blasted at you in 100 kilometers an hour,
Hmm.
it's easy to fall for it if you don't hit pause and then you start to reflect. And but you have to dig into so many different areas to get the understanding that these are not the same even periods they are built in. The
Yeah.
Chinese structure they often talk about is built much later than the Giza pyramids, and the Giza pyramids is built far long before the Mexican pyramids are built, and there's really no connection, function, or structure, or architecture, or anything like that. But if you kind of just blast it quickly, it looks the same.
And it's like a gish gallop is what it is.
Yeah.
That's the exact technique, is to just throw out a bunch of BS quickly in a way that looks nice and sounds clever. And somebody just put in the chat, as a non-expert, it's easy to fool other non-experts. And so as a non-expert, you're also used to seeing what non-experts are talking about and what can appeal to them. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's amazing how much fake archaeology has pervaded traditional media. Um, it's actually quite surprising because you think about it like, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, we do know that there's lots of issues with medicine and other things, but like in general, the things that are classified as documentaries about
Mm.
like biology or ecology or about medicine and whatnot are pretty good. But I mean, I'm sure there's room for quibbling. But I don't know. I've watched a lot of David Attenborough, and I'm an environmental archaeologist. Quite a bit of that's pretty high quality,
Mm.
educational, factual entertainment, like as you put it, for real archaeology. That was your slogan. By the way, Fredrick here is the one in charge of our website. He designed our website. He's done a phenomenal job. If there's any problems, you can blame it on all the creators who have taken forever to get us time zones and edits, and they've misinterpreted time zones. And I saw some people talking about that, like the website can't be trusted. And it's like, well, we set a deadline of stuff like 10 days ago, and we've been getting stuff up until like yesterday. So,
Yeah.
what can we do? I don't know what to say. We said at the beginning this will be big and messy and inclusive. Whoever wants to join can, and that's what we've gone for. And I think it's been a lot of fun. There's hashtags and other things, and we're all here. We have like almost 150 of us watching, so it's kind of good. And I'm sure other people will tune in later or watch it from the start later. But yeah, and so. Okay, so ancient aliens. So why do you think that this was up until recently, why was Ancient Aliens the most prominent, most popular claim for pseudo-archaeology?
They tied into the New Age movement quite
Mm-hmm.
well and got an audience there. And then, we all love mysteries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why some of us become archaeologists, because we want to kind of figure out the mysteries of history and unravel that. And they're good salespeople, and on the surface, Ancient Alien makes good sci-fi,
Yes.
brilliant
Oh, it makes very good
art
sci-fi.
in that sense. And I think that kind of lures people in, and especially the authors like Van Daniken and David Childress. They are not great authors. Graham Hancock writes much better than those others,
You
but
hear that,
it's
Graham? You hear that? Somebody who doesn't study you as much as he studies these other people thinks that they write worse than you.
yeah, Van Daniken is just horrible to read his stuff. I'm not sure really, but it's accessible and it's cheap, and they kind of have these interesting aspects to it, and they bring up new places that's not really discussed in the Western world, especially in the 70s and 80s when it all started, which led to people kind of getting interested in all of that. And yeah, and then they were picked up by the History Channel for the first season of Ancient Aliens. That was supposed to be only one season, actually, but with the success of the show, they kind of got 18 more out of it.
Yes, yes. I think that that's what happens is, and I'm worried that's what we're about to see with like Ancient Apocalypse, because even this season, while this season has a third as many views as in the first season at the same point, still a good number of views, you know? It certainly to me strikes me as profitable, especially since they only had to pay Keanu Reeves for about 30 seconds of his time and clip him into like every single episode and call him a host. But you
Yeah,
know, so yeah, that definitely worries me about this. I have a feeling that this Atlantis trend is gonna stay popular for a while.
and in
Um,
a way, they are cheap to produce but give high
ex-
returns in that sense.
exactly, exactly. It's cheap production because it's not scripted. It's still the amount of money they're putting in for production value is still far more than we can put into our YouTube videos. So it looks phenomenal for archaeology, but for the price of like a a scripted drama, it's a
Mm.
tiny fraction of that price. Sorry, I'm trying to set the settings on this stream. Somebody asked if I can make it so the captions go on, and I have no idea how to do that. But that's causing it to lag with you. I don't think it's lagging with them. It seems to be an issue with Zoom. So I'll make it so you're not lagging in a second for me.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know where to put this. Oh no. I really don't see anything for captions for while live. I would love to have that be available. Um,
yeah,
this
that's
this might have
beyond
to
my
be
knowledge, unfortunately.
yeah, this might have to just be something I have to research. Allow automatic concepts, automatic places, tags. Aha, captions. So maybe if I. All right, go on. So for you, what is the most interesting thing you learned while watching Ancient Aliens? What is the best thing they do besides production value? I mean, in terms of their argument. Um, have you?
Their argument is rather weak.
Mm-hmm.
What surprised me most when I've been viewing the show is how little ancient history they're actually dealing with. It's a lot, they have a lot of episodes regarding basically modern history and UFO lore and all of that. It's not really archaeology in a
Okay.
sense, but it's more, they have episodes on abductees and all of that. They even have
Like
one
more
on,
recent abductees in a sense. So,
yeah,
it's as much ancient aliens as modern aliens in many ways.
yeah, the thing is they don't have much, so they kind of try to fill it out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, so they talk about the Aikohara forest in Japan, known as the suicide forest, and they try to tie that to aliens abducting people or using alien technology to get people to commit suicide, which is a very dangerous idea to put in regarding a place like that,
Mm-hmm.
that people go there to die, and it's the aliens' fault. It's not a mental health issue, and they kind of make these very absurd and sometimes dangerous claims in the show. Same with World War II. They have an episode on the Third Reich and how aliens were, messing around with Adolf Hitler, and they even rewrite uh, Holocaust death in the show, which is also a very dangerous idea to talk about in the show, and they
Yeah, of
don't really
course.
acknowledge it, and they even quote people who are neo-Nazis in episodes. They don't
Huh.
really mention these connection and that tie to the esoteric Nazis, but it's still a big part of the ancient alien sphere in a sense.
Yes, I think that's part of the history of a lot of pseudo-archaeology, as we know.
Yeah.
A lot of these kind of esoteric, new agey things have passed through their Nazi phase, and that's part of the history of them, which is part of why we speak up, because it's not that we're even accusing any of these people of being Nazis, but everybody hears Nazi and they're like, "You're calling me a fucking Nazi," and it's like, no, I'm fucking not. I'm trying to explain why understanding fake history sometimes leads towards people mistreating other people. And so this is why we need to pay attention to real history and real archaeology, because this kind of fake stuff can be abused and has been abused at multiple times in our recent
Hmm.
history. And so, but you can't have an adult conversation with people on the internet. And so it's just like, which is why we're having an adult conversation here. But it is what it is. So I've turned on, are you seeing the captions on the Zoom?
I just got a little note here that it
Because, yeah,
going
they're
to be
on the
transcribed.
Zoom, but they're not coming through to the live stream. I'm just going to have to sort this out later.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone who would like captions. I have tried 2 different places, and I'm not going to be able to do this live. I don't know if and how I can get live captions coming through. I do know on the recorded version, then the YouTube will do its transcribing, and then they'll be available then after the fact. But yeah, and this is one of the issues. I mean, how do you address this kind of history of racism and stuff like that when you podcast or YouTube or write about this? Are you more blunt? How do you, what are your thoughts on them? Do they recognize, or even are they trying to profit off of racism? Is that your thought, or is it just kind of the history of it, and we need to teach people that historical aspect?
I mean, if we go back to, I think the best example is the episode on the Third Reich, because in
Mm-hmm.
this episode they quote, he's not appearing as an expert, but they're quoting Jan, what's his name? It's very silly. Yeah, Jan van Helsing,
Okay. I
and
feel like I've heard that name.
it's a pen name. He's chosen Van Helsing because Van Helsing kills bloodsuckers. And bloodsuckers in his case are Jews, of course.
Yeah.
And he wrote this several books regarding UFOs, the Third Reich, and how the aliens were involved in the Third Reich and the Second World War. And also he's a Holocaust denier and all of that, but they use his material in the show presented as fact by an expert.
Yeah,
They
it's
don't,
like Graham Hancock and Marco Vigato.
yeah,
Vigato has written some stuff that talks about Aryan superiority and stuff like that, and it's like, why do you have this guy on your show? Hello, or like, other Atlantis types, the same sort of thing, and it's a. I mean, and this is the other issue. People are just not being adults about this, because it's like you don't have to look very far to
no.
find this in our world today, let alone back to the Third Reich. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and he promoted the protocols of elders of science and all that is connected to Holocaust deniers such as David Irving, David Hogan, and Jerma Rudolph. And I mean, it's a very dangerous source in a sense. I mean, using his work will, of course, promote very bad ideas, and they quoting and using his material about this real society, for example, and they kind of, I mean, if you scratch enough there, It's they try to rewrite World War II history, which is never a good idea, and they don't put this in any context. So here in this episode, I was a lot more blunt regarding this type of things and the connections between the far right and the ancient alien movement. And the far right is getting more and more influence over it, in a sense. So
Yeah, and I
yeah.
mean, we're seeing this with a lot of this, that it's becoming part of the culture wars. Even as soon as we bring up things like race and whatnot, then it automatically situates it in that way. And I think,
Hmm.
I tend to think some of these people are doing this intentionally because they know that they're guaranteed a certain subsection of the audience. These days, nobody actually tries to appeal to everybody. Instead, you appeal towards that side of the culture wars that you're on, and you say, hey, I'm fighting for my side, so follow and listen to me because I have something interesting to say. And, yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
so
and I mean,
no, keep going on. Sorry.
and it's not just that, but they also do a lot of reimagining of Native American lore and history in a sense that it kind of twist it to a way that they are supposedly speaking about aliens, but it's basically classic shamanism. They're adopting these cultures and reframe them to a more new age idea of alien beings and all of that. And that, of course, also is harmful for the Native American community.
Yes. And so that's the how. Let's walk through that. How is this harmful for the indigenous Americans? Give me some examples.
Uh, Take, for example, the Serpent Mound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think most here might be familiar with, but it is a very important place, and it was in ancient Apocalypse where Graham Hancock was banned, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah,
He wasn't
it's
banned. He was banned from filming just on Solstice Day because
yeah.
that was the sacred day for those tribes. But whatever.
But it's an important part of Native American identity for certain tribes in the area, and the Shawnee tribe, and they actually recently got reclaiming the site as part of their own as hosts of the site and can do their rituals and participate and lecture at the site, but they are getting interrupted by new age pretendians.
Yes.
And there's a lot of there's a new age holistic center just nearby, and they tend to go there and dig down crystals. And I mean, they're claiming this site as their own because they claim that they are Native Americans, but they are not. They are kind of just pretending, playing,
Yeah.
bastardizing. And here we have a community that's trying to reconnect with their past and their traditions that in some cases they couldn't practice due to laws that's been around for quite some time. And we see the same in Canada and all of that. So that's why it's important to not try to claim these ideas as your own or rewrite them because I mean, it will hurt the community and they have to kind of defend themselves. There was even an incident when one of the chiefs, Shawnee chiefs, did a lecture, got interrupted by two white guys or a couple that wanted to, just talk with them because they felt that they were Native Americans too and had a right to the site and started to interrupt the meeting and was asked to go. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so somebody just pointed out that some actual natives buy into New Age stuff, and I don't think that's the point here. Of course, there's going to be a few indigenous people
Yeah.
that buy into New Age stuff. The reality is that these pretendians who buy into New Age stuff, they're very numerous, and they don't really care. They're very reckless. And so they'll go, there's a history of this that goes back over several hundred years to people actually burying fake artifacts in these mounds to pretend
Mm.
that it's the lost tribes of Israel or to pretend that it's crystals or whatever. And this is a real issue. It doesn't matter if there's a few indigenous people who agree with this kind of stuff. This is a larger issue which the larger indigenous community protests against.
Yeah.
As we see, for example, with that Hopi elder in the Sapiens magazine article about on ancient apocalypse, and elsewhere. There's constant protests from indigenous communities about the way they're being treated. If anybody saw my interview on New Scientist, I was in the States like a month and a half ago, filming a couple podcasts, and I was in Florida, and I was in a taxi on the way to one of the studios. And so the guy started talking to me about what I do, and I mentioned that I'm doing this podcast. He's like, "Oh, what on? Archaeology?" And then he's like,
Yeah.
"What's the point?" I'm like, "Well, look, people claim that indigenous people didn't build this stuff, and so I'm trying to explain this stuff." And he's like, "I'm from Peru," and I could not agree more. It's just ridiculous to see that my ancestors, to people here in America, people are like, "Your ancestors didn't build those monuments. It was aliens or something like that," and it's just like. This is just ridiculous. Most people that are descended from these groups, they want their ancestors to get credit for what they got. They want their stories of how their ancestors did this to be the stories that gets told. And like, it's so ironic where you get like these ancient aliens or the Hancocks or whatever, where they take one little snippet from their stories and they say, "Oh, we're carrying through these traditions," but they're ignoring the parts of those stories which actually claim credit for building all those monuments, because those are in all those fucking stories, and you're saying they didn't build it, it was some other group that did. And so, it's just this total sleight of hand they pull on their audience. What's the slickest thing you think the Ancient Aliens show does to people? Is it just the graphics and the gish gallop, or is there any sort of rhetorical device they frequently use, or what?
Yeah, they usually do kind of what if on everything.
So this
So they
JAQ,
might say,
just asking
what if
questions, yeah.
what if this and this, then does it mean that this is true? And you're supposed to say yes, because now you have seen all the connections. And I mean, we did an episode just a few weeks ago with RQ Soup, and it became a thing throughout that. What if this? Then it must be true.
What if dolphins made my hat? Maybe it's true, like. I mean,
Let's
that's the
say
thing
that this
is you can say
statement
what
is,
if anything, and it's just,
yeah,
and I mean, it's really annoying, the state of public discourse these days, because like you see it not just with ancient aliens, but you see it with all the modern UAP phenomena. And I also think that that's part of what makes Ancient Aliens so successful, is it buys into two conspiracy theories at the same time. And so, it buys into this idea of a lost history that needs to be found, and the experts don't want you to hear it. So that kind of aspect, which is a very common conspiracy theory with a lot of different iterations. That's all of pseudo-archaeology, after all. And at the same time, it has that modern sci-fi of UAPs, UFOs, and aliens and whatnot. That's a very modern conception, of course. And so I think that's probably why they're so successful, because they have a two shot, which works well.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept, and the idea works well. For example, if you play Assassin's Creed, you have this ancient alien element baked into the story. So, I mean, it's good fiction, or could be good fiction if you portrayed it like that, but they want it to be taken seriously, and they're making a lot of connections that's not there. They reinvent myth, they creating new myth from indigenous people, just so it should fit their narrative, and they are not beyond making things up if it makes it better, or
What's the most
using.
egregious thing they've made up that you've seen?
That's a hard one, because
I'm putting you on the spot. This is something I'm researching with regards to.
yeah, I mean, they do it so often that I no longer really pay attention to it, because
Okay.
it's not really that interesting to just call out, oh, this is not really true, but kind of give a better history
Do they
regarding
ever
it. But
make up stuff about archaeologists? Like they say archaeologists do it this way, when actually that's not how archaeology's done at all?
they actually try to keep away from methodology in general.
Okay. This is why Hancock has a field day with his crowd by saying he's more plausible than the ancient aliens types. Okay, that's interesting. So all right. So having never watched an episode, and like, what's the? I'm trying to think this through. The question I'm trying to ask. So when I did my research to talk with Graham on Joe
Hmm.
Rogan, what I was trying to do was I was trying to think through what is the clearest archaeological narratives, meaning the real evidence, that just, it cuts the legs out under from this lost civilization hypothesis, right? It's just, and because, like, it's just like with aliens, not a single professional even entertains this as plausible, because neither of these ideas are plausible at all if you know
No.
the evidence. And so I thought, and that before I even, talked to Graham about potentially debating him, I already had in mind that exact narrative of we need to focus on the Ice Age evidence, because he situates his civilization in the Ice Age, but he never talks about Ice Age evidence. He just ignores it because it would disprove him. And so,
Hmm.
that was like, for example, what was one of my key goals was to go in there with that. And so I'm thinking, like, with Ancient Aliens, like, what would be the key body of art? Because you can go through and debunk stuff like pyramids and the SETI hieroglyphs or whatever. But debunking, as we know, is not as impactful as giving
No.
a strong narrative. So, what would be the key archaeological narrative that undercuts Ancient Aliens? Is there one or two that you could think of if you were to give like a presentation to convince people?
Also a difficult one because they don't have, I mean, for them, they use ancient aliens from basically Stone Age, or even one part of the narrative is that they, created humans. Evolution is a lie. They're not big on evolution in general, but they have this anti-evolution part, they have this anti-history part, and they span 300,000 years of history. So up until our days, that's they use as evidence for alien visitation or interference in the world. So, I mean, you can do several prongs. You can talk evolution, you can talk how we understand history, the evidence, how tools evolves and is
So you
created and
really need to do
utilized.
the big picture. It has to.
Yeah,
This is why I find Ancient Aliens so tough to address. This is why personally, you can't pre-bunk it. It's like pre-bunk proof. Other
I
than
mean,
getting a university level education in archaeology.
yeah, because they bring up everything, so it's hard to just bite down on one
But is
thing. It
there but is there something okay? But is there a few rhetorical examples they use a lot that are at the core of their group's belief system? Just a few examples that are brought up over and over again by them and their fans.
Yeah, it's that humans are too primitive to make these things, and therefore they
Huh.
need outside influence. And same with the human evolution, according to them, is not possible. Therefore, ancient aliens must have come here and created humans, either in test tubes or, as Ken Fader calls it, a horny ape theory. They came here, saw this Homo erectus people, and started to, have
You're
fun with
right.
them.
You're very right. I've seen a lot of people talk about this sort of breeding humans or whatever in test tubes or just by mating with them. And that is at the core of their belief system. So I think that does answer a question. A really good pre-bunk strategy is to teach human evolution and
Yeah,
how that works and the evidence there, because at the core of their belief, it's not just that aliens built this stuff, it's that aliens created humanity.
yeah,
Huh.
and society, and gave us all the ideas, and that's why we have this connection between sites or locations, according to them.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. And are there any monuments or cultures in particular? Is it Egypt, like with the Atlantis stuff, or is there somewhere else that they spend a lot of time focusing on in particular? What are the hot
Egypt is
spots?
their favorite spot in
Okay.
general. Egypt comes up all the time, but they pick and choose from everywhere, basically. It's South African Stonehenges, or basically it's agriculture formations from the 1600s, but they try to date them to ancient gold mines because aliens need gold for their atmosphere to breathe. So they come here to.
Wait. Their hypothesis. Wait a second. I told you I've never seen an episode. So their hypothesis is that the reason humans are interested in gold is because the aliens need gold to
Yeah.
be able to breathe in their atmosphere on the planet of Zircon or wherever the hell they're from.
Yeah, that's from Zachariah Sitchin who brought that idea, but it comes again with Van Daniken and the others. I'm not sure really why you need gold in your atmosphere, but very important to alien beings
I mean, you
for.
know, gold and Goldschlager works, you know.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. What else is there? Some wacko thing that I've not thought of that's core to their hypothesis? Give me something else like this. What's like the crazy is a terrible word. What is the most out there idea that like, you know, maybe doesn't get mentioned all the time, but like could stick in somebody's brain?
No, but I mean, they have a very strange idea on how electricity work. I mean, if I were an alien who traveled through space, I surely can use material to generate electricity and, make it go between different places. But a core fundament of ancient aliens is that, for example, the Giza pyramids are power plants and the obelisks are wireless transmitters. And they have this idea
Yeah.
that stone is a very good conductor for electricity, but is one of the worst material that you can use. And I'm sure if they can mine gold, that they can mine steel, iron, or copper, that
Yeah, exactly.
far better for electricity.
I mean, if they're
than-
able to build these monuments and they're able to mine gold, I think they could mine some copper, like without a
Yeah.
problem. It's they're aliens after all with advanced technology. I mean, what the hell? They can't do that. Like,
Yeah, and that's
and
also a core belief that they use stone because that's a ready material for them to use. But at the same time, they have mining equipment. They can, mine better sources, and we see that in human evolution too of construction. In earlier, they usually use things around them, but then they start to import materials or different stones that fits better their what they want to achieve with the construction. And we would see this in the aliens too, that they come here and suddenly they build giant uh, uh, towers for electricity and power plants. It would be visible in the archaeological material, but they try
of
to
course.
circumvent that explanation by saying, oh, stone is brilliant for conducting electricity. But yeah, I mean, it's not.
No, of course not. So this also brings me back to something we started talking about a little bit in Manchester. What was that? Was that just last weekend? I have had 2 insane weeks. So you know, one of the things that strikes me as I do more research into pseudo-archaeology is there's all these different theories. And right now you're talking about like stone as a conductor for electricity. There's people that believe in lost civilization theories that have the same idea, right? You know, like Rick
Yeah.
Dunn and some of those lost advanced high technology people. And so, you know, there's such it's such a strange universe that they have where they're sharing all these same ideas. And what other sort of similarities do you see between ancient aliens and what I'm more familiar with, the Atlantis lost civilization stuff?
I mean, there's crossover. Chris Dunn has been on a lot of ancient alien episodes and all of that, and he has these giant buzzsaws in ancient Egypt that were cutting stone, and I'm not sure, but
Were they made out of gold?
not sure. But Chris Dunn, I don't think he's an ancient alien believer necessarily, but he's kind of adopted into same with Graham
Yeah.
Hancock
It's
was
like
also
Graham
in the.
Hancock was on there. I think they talk about some of their ideas and then they get co-opted
Yeah.
into ancient aliens lore, let's say.
Yeah, but I mean, there's not really much. They use the same sources like Helena Blavatsky and that esoteric approach, but other
Okay.
than that, it's
So
very
where
little.
does where does ancient aliens come from? So like if you trace the historiography, the history of ideas with Atlantis, I did this on the live stream yesterday. I was answering a question on Reddit, and it was sort of like, how does what's the relationship between fiction and pseudo-archaeology? And if you trace Atlantis, it really clearly goes through fiction. So it starts off as a philosophical allegory, then it becomes outright fiction in Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, and then it slowly migrates to becoming pseudo-history or pseudo-archaeology. Is there a trajectory like that for Ancient Aliens at all, where it started as some science fiction that became then pseudo-archaeology, or did it just sort of get invented by, it was Van Doniken was the first person, right? Am I wrong?
He was the first to be really big, but we have Morning of the Magicians by Bergier and Powell that was basically released maybe 1 year or so before. But we also have Carl Sagan, who wrote an article 2 years. I'm not sure if Van Daniken, Powell, Bergier saw that article, but Sagan discussed that there could have been alien visitation and that archaeologists and historians might want to keep an eye out for it in the historical record. But he never claimed that they actually visited. But he had a hope.
So
at
you're
least.
saying this is Carl Sagan's fault? All right, well, fair enough.
In some ways, yeah.
God damn it, Carl Sagan. Everybody, I just see somebody on live chat said I blame the History Channel. I blame fucking Carl Sagan, okay?
But yeah, but we have a different foundation for these legends even further back. For example, the esoteric Nazi movement after World War II got into aliens and that they had been on the Nazi German side for some reason and had this, but it was a more esoteric idea about it and not really that they were behind civilizations or ancient aliens that start to come with Powell and Berger and Van Daniken and then Zachariah Sitchin, and there we have the foundation for the whole ancient alien idea.
Okay. That makes sense. So it did not pass through science fiction at any point until later. So there was no science fiction about this
No, that started to come later. Stargate is co-op from one of these ancient alien.
Yeah. Okay,
but yeah,
that's interesting. So it has a different trajectory, which is a little fascinating to think on. Another thing we were talking about Manchester with this overlap between lost civilization and aliens is I find it really interesting how there's like this universe of sites that are constantly referred to by all these different pseudo-arcs. And they all sort of just refer to like the same, I don't know, it's probably about 50 different sites, something like that. And they ignore everything else. Have you given some thoughts since we talked about that? Is there any that like strike out at you as thinking about the different ways or the same ways in which they co-opt the same narratives from the same sites? Thank you, Urban Safari. Thank you, everyone, by the way, for the super chats. I really do appreciate it. Clearly, wearing the hat helps.
Hat is great, but I mean, as I said, Gunung Padang is maybe the best example of the crossover because Ancient Aliens visit the site too, but they, unlike Graham Hancock, focus more on the legends that they ascribe to the people living there, and they just cherry pick legends that kind of fits their idea of people, those who came from the stars and all of that, and they try to co-opt those legends more than the site itself. They don't really spend much time talking about it, but they mention, it's really old, it's very complex, and you must have advanced technology to make it, is the core idea there. And then they use a lot of mythology to try to
which I mean Graham does as well, and that's where I think they both. It's just so weird how they all go to the same friggin' sites. It's like of all the places in Indonesia, they all go to Gunung Padang, and like of all the places in America, they all go to Serpent Mound. And so it's just like it's the same like 20 friggin' sites, maybe like I said, it's probably more like 50, but it just sort of gets, as an archaeologist, it kind of gets boring because it's like, is this really, and this is what it is, and then all the fans are like, no, but this is how I got interested in archaeology. It's like, yeah, you got interested in people who shit on archaeologists and only share like a tiny fraction of what there actually is, and don't present it accurately, and it's just like, I don't know, it's that universe, I guess. Are any of these? So we titled this "Unexplained ancient aliens phenomena. So are there any places that they go where you think there actually is an unexplained mystery? It doesn't,
Not
obviously it's not aliens. I just mean that it's something that, like, at least in this universe, there are some examples of actual mysterious things. Several of them just aren't. Everyone goes to Baalbek and highlights those really big blocks at Baalbek. But those are clearly built into a Roman terrace that's very well dated. And if you look at the
Yeah.
stratigraphy and the archaeology of it, there's no friggin' mystery there at all. It's the only mystery is why did they use such large stones, and who the hell knows, who really cares?
Yeah.
We know the date really clearly. And so are there any legitimate sort of things that are mysterious, I guess, in the places that they go?
I mean, there's not in that sense. I would say that Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, I mean, we know a lot about the sites, but there's still a lot to uncover as far as I understand about the culture and people living there. But the site itself isn't a mystery how it was built. But so it's more like that. I think there's, of course, things we don't know yet in archaeology or haven't figured out, but that's not really a mystery in that sense, I would say.
Okay.
But I haven't seen any, oh, we have no idea how this could even be achieved by these people or by this period or time. But there's, of course, sites that we don't understand as well as we might want to.
Okay.
But that's a
So
separate
give an
issue.
example like that. Are there anywhere they're justified for focusing on, for example?
No, but I mean, Pumapunku is
One of the best ones. Okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Or it can be that I'm not a South American archaeologist. My specialization is in the Viking Age, really. But as far as I have been able and with the people I spoke with, it's I mean, things we can always know more about stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, for me with the Hancock stuff, it was Gunung Padang, right?
Yeah.
Because you go online and you try to find accurate information about Gunung Padang, and up until fairly recently, meaning in this year, it was next to impossible to be sure that what you're getting, because it's just a wave of BS. And so I ended up being able to track down the actual excavator that excavated the site and interview him. And then that led to an editor at Archaeology magazine getting in touch with me and asking for the contact of that excavator. So now there's a really good Archaeology magazine feature in English on Gunung Padang, which everybody should go check out if you're interested. I saw some people talking about Gunung Padang in the chat. And so it's now we have that information out there, but that's why that's so mysterious. It's just because it was published in a different language, right? It's not really a mystery. It's just we need to get that translated and disseminated further since there's such interest in that site, and because it's ginned up by these people who are calling it mysterious. And it's sort of when you talk to Professor Lutfi Yondri, and it's you can see the excavation goes below the walls. They get radiocarbon from under the walls. Bing, we know when they're built. It's really quite simple, and we have a series of dates like that, and they all date consistently to about 2,000 years ago. And it's something I've been thinking on is sort of which of these mysteries are actually mysterious? Not many of them. I think I put on Twitter recently where Graham was just archaeologists want to drain the mystery out of everything. And it's no. We want to ignore the things that are no longer mysterious and focus on the questions that we still have that are interesting and mysterious. Because there's a lot of them related to human evolution or to Egyptian society or to climate change in the past or to X, Y, and Z. There's a whole lot of cool questions that we're researching. But why are we focused on things that are not mysterious anymore?
Yeah. Come to think about another, not that kind of mysterious. Have you heard about the Copper Scroll from the Dead Sea Scroll collection?
Vaguely, but I know no details about it. Tell me the story.
Yeah, so within the Dead Sea Scrolls, I hope it's the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yeah, so this collection of ancient or old text, they found among these 970 manuscripts, a copper manuscript.
Okay.
That seems to be sort of a instruction on how to find a treasure.
Okay. And my spidey sense is tingling right now.
Yeah, and it's been translated and seems to referring different treasures located around the area, or an area is a bit unspecified which area is really referring to. But we don't really know if it's a real treasure or it's supposed to be some sort of imagined treasure, or it's a like isn't it in ancient Greek, they put up a treasure list at a temple to see what's been donated and how
Yeah, of
much
course.
cool
Yeah, yeah.
stuff you had. And maybe if it's something like that, but
That makes
for
sense.
Jewish culture. But that's a real mystery in a sense in what it was supposed to be or refer to or lead to.
Okay. Interesting. That is a weird one. My spidey sense is still tingling, given that it's made out of copper and the other Dead Sea Scrolls aren't. That's a little weird.
Yeah, that's also why
Yeah.
did it they went into big trouble to make it look like parchment. So it's rolled up even like parchment.
Well, that could
So,
happen then with different tablets. That will get you'll have inscribed metal tablets in the Greco-Roman world at that same time, let's say,
hmm,
and roll them up. Especially cursed tablets made of lead. It was really common. So even related, therefore, to religious documents, it's not unheard of. I can't think of many that are bronze or copper, but there are a few. Um, yeah, there's some in the Greek world from earlier. Some sacrificial calendars. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I need to think on that. No, I don't know much about it, so I don't have any answers. But the idea of a treasure map definitely makes my spidey sense tingle. Let's say.
No, it's a fun and interesting object and bring up in one of the episodes. It's actually one of the few times I can sit and agree, okay, it's a bit of a mystery, but
Yeah, yeah. So so we have 10 minutes left. What's before I say just what else do you want to say? What's your biggest sort of like success or impact or something your best episode that you're most proud of? What can we direct people towards that it's like, hey, if you want to sort of think about ancient aliens, we got Frederick here. Check out this.
oh, that's a hard
We can
question.
do two or three if you want.
Yeah, kind of like my cover of the Turin Shroud.
The
That's
Turin
two
Shroud,
episodes.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
and how it's not evidence of alien technology that's been used. And then I was very happy with the non-mystery of Pumapunku and Tiwanaku.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I also covered the Kensington Runestone,
Yeah, I
the
think I saw that.
American.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a great one. I think it can offer a lot of things that's only been in Swedish previously. Uh, to make
Definitely,
that.
everybody go check out Frederick's work on the Kensington Runestone, because that's actually, it relates to what I was saying about Gunung Padang. You're bringing information in to, because look, we live in a world where more people speak English as a second
Hmm,
language than any other language. And so by getting that Swedish information out, it's very valuable. And so that's like where you got to go. If you want to think about Kensington Runestone, check out Digging Up Ancient Aliens right now. Go there.
yeah.
Or right after this stream, tomorrow, sometime soon. Okay, I think those are good ones. So, all right, what do you want to end on then? What's your big takeaway after thinking about ancient aliens for 3 years? I don't envy you. I mean, I'm doing a similar thing. Are you going to write a book on this? What's your? Do you have an end goal, or are you just going to keep doing it and debunking
I
it?
think
Or
I'm planning on maybe do a book one day, but I kind of jokingly say that this is just a documentation of the one man's descent into madness.
you seem a little mad. Yeah, I could say that.
No, but I think I will continue looking at in ancient aliens because they say a lot of dumb stuff, and I think there need to be some pushback against it. And I have an episode coming up on the Vikings later in November,
Okay.
where they claim that the Vikings had alien help and all of that. And I'm not looking forward to watching that because I mean, when I started looking at ancient aliens, I was just shouted at the television, took breaks, just walked around muttering for myself. But now I can kind of watch them in one go without much headache. But that one, I think that one might break me.
Yes, it's like me. I read to try to. The only thing I've actually done to research ancient aliens in any serious way is I skimmed through von Daniken's book on the Greek world. He has this thing with Greek temples and how they line up,
Hmm.
like ley line type BS. And so I did skim through that. I was doing that. It was a few years ago, but yeah, it's oh god. So at some point, I expect I will start moving over a little bit into some Ancient Aliens content. But I want to finish up what I'm doing with Atlantis. I'm writing a book on that now, and I gotta
Yeah,
stick to what I know and do research on. But I do think that there's value to thinking about that thing
yeah,
as
and
well,
they are
especially
heavily
with
into.
the recent misuse of indigenous remains to create those fake aliens.
Yeah,
That really
that's
angered me and a lot of other scholars and people. It was just like,
yeah, and they
yeah,
have a tendency to misuse human remains, especially the Paracas skull, for example, the
yeah,
elongated, and
yeah. I see that on
they
Twitter
are
a lot.
abusing a lot of remains for some reason. They even have David Childress claiming to show Native American giants. And he holds a skull in his hand. He takes it out by putting his thumbs in the eye socket to start with, but then he holds it. Oh, look, this head that's from a Native American giant, and you see clearly it's just a normal human skull.
People are such. Oh my god. Ay 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 ay. How? Why is this? Why? Okay, so we have some questions for you. Someone asked, have you ever chatted with the Probably Not Aliens podcast ever?
I think we try to email each other sometimes, but I think we just have missed each other to some
Okay,
extent. Yeah.
so probably perhaps in the future, since you're on the same page, or same side ish or whatever, interested in the same stuff.
Yeah.
Um, okay, yeah. That sorry, we've had over 200 people on at times, so it's going fast. Some of these things about different topics on sphinxes and stone vessels and and Nathaniel, who's about to jump on Zoom, Nathaniel, he says we should stream a round of the Ancient Aliens drinking game. Didn't yeah? I feel like
I
he
would
sent
not
me.
recommend that because it's like when we had a drinking games watching the TV show Vikings when I went to university, we got shit faced.
When we have Nathaniel come on next, he will tell us how to play that drinking game so that everybody who wants to get shit faced while watching Ancient Aliens can. Oh my god. Oh my god, what is this? What is happening to this world? Why are we living in this world? Like, what reality have we entered? It's like aliens and lost civilizations. Like, man, people
Yeah,
need to
but they
like get
have
in a trench and like dig.
yeah, but they've been there for a long time. We just were poor on handling them before. This idea that we shouldn't engage with the content and try to
Oh yeah.
talk about it from a professional standpoint. I think that was a mistake made by previous generations that we have to rectify now.
I fully agree. I think I don't know if you saw we were talking about right before you got on. Andrew Kinkella just put out a little short from his. He was on a podcast and he was sort of saying, "Look, we have to just go do something." The pseudo archaeologists have won. They dominate the media,
Hmm.
and especially TV and movies. And so it's just like we have no choice but to engage because we have zero platform. This is our platform. Welcome to Real Archaeology, everyone, where we have 60 of us coming together to share real content.
Yeah.
We're going to be on Netflix in like 50 years. There's a couple good real archaeology shows on Netflix. I'll give them that. The Secrets of the Saqqara was really good, and it
Hmm.
was headed by Salima Ikram, who's a fantastic zooarchaeologist and Egyptologist. What else? The Secrets of the Neanderthals, I think it was called. That was also quite good. I know Becky Ragg Sykes and Emma Pomeroy were on there, and others. So there is a few good bits. And in the UK, there's more. There's Digging Up Britain with Alice Roberts. That's really good. And
Yeah.
then Time Team. Those are the two of what I can tell. I don't actually watch a ton of TV here, but what I do, those two seem to be really high standards. But
Yeah, Time Team, I've seen a couple of them. They're making good content, engaging, educational. Yeah.
where are you from, Frederick? You're from Sweden?
Yeah, I'm from Sweden.
Okay, we had a question there for that. And other people are saying they hope we get a Netflix series. I think we're gonna try. We're gonna write up Graham's son and be like, hey, can we have a series?
We also want one.
Mr. Hancock, could you please give a series to real archaeologists? Please, please, sir, can we have some more?
Can I have some more show?
We just want to share the truth in a fun way, like that's all we're down to do is, like do that. If we get more people watching our podcasts and our YouTubes, I think it'll happen. I think if
Yeah.
we work more with, people like Milo and others who have built
Yeah,
up
and
a
I know that.
platform and keep pushing to build this whole ecosystem, I think we can get there. It's just going to be one slow, small step at a time.
Yeah,
And
I know that Anakin Kella is going to be on some TV show rather soon, so
good.
more people into through the door to Hollywood or
Yeah. Let me see. Nathaniel, I guess if you're listening, just jump on. And then I'll kick Frederick out.
Yeah.
And then
But
he'll be
happy to be
watching
here.
and chatting, or he'll be somewhere else. Glenn mentions to see Dara O'Brien's 2-hour documentary on Giza with Chris Naunton, Salima Ikram, and Raksha Devi. That sounds like a bunch of really good people. So yeah, that's a good one. I mean, you definitely get these kind of standalone things. Yeah.
Yeah.
There aren't many good series show, but they're getting there. They're getting there. Like I said, the Digging Up Britain with Alice Roberts is pretty good. They have a lot of good archaeologists on there
Yeah.
every episode. Colleagues who I know very well and like. Okay, so Nathaniel's here, so I'm going to say goodbye to you, Frederick. Frederick, it was really good to meet you last week, and it was really good to chat with you here. I hope we do some more collaborations in the future.
Yeah, happy to be here. Had a good time.
And I think hopefully we'll talk. We should do another Real Archaeology at some point in the future because I think it was a good success. And I think we should keep it somehow less micromanaged even than we did with this one and make it just more about just everybody putting out content, putting up a hashtag, and then there's a website that points towards the different channels is really, I think, partly the goal. And yeah, because I think it's just big and messy rather than anything crazy. But thank you so much for helping out with that.
Thank you.
And we'll chat later.
Yeah, definitely. Take care.
Let's let in Nathaniel. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We cannot. We can see you
And
now.
now we can see you.
Excellent. You got your nice little pipe, I see.
It's a nice day.
It is here too. I almost wish I wasn't live streaming so I could go out and enjoy it, but it is what it is. It looks like actually this week might be nice. So first off, introduce yourself. You're a commercial archaeologist and environmental archaeologist. So tell everybody about your background and what you do.
Yeah. If you don't know me, my name's Nathaniel Fossaaen. I've been a field archaeologist for about 12 years now. I started in the very beginning of 2012, and in that time I've done most of my work has been in the American Southeast, Tennessee River Valley, the Ozarks, Appalachia, these kinds of places. But I've also dabbled in I've done stuff in New Mexico and Wyoming and Alaska, and I've done 3 excavations in Ireland and 1 on the Ness of Brodgar in Orkney.
Okay.
So I like to keep my hands in a lot of different things and stay at least like tangentially informed about stuff that's not, in my little neighborhood. But yeah, so I'm a crew chief for a company called Integrated Environmental Services. So I am out running survey projects mostly and also do some data recovery type stuff. Also a lot in the Ozarks and Oklahoma, these kinds of areas.
Perfect.
And I also run a small YouTube channel where I talk about American archaeology pretty much exclusively.
Yes, so go check out Nathaniel's YouTube channel. Go subscribe right now. It's his name, Nathaniel Fossaaen. Fossaaen.
Fossaaen, yeah.
Wait, let me make sure I spell it right. It's Nath. Oh, it's right here. Okay, pops up. That's his @ Go find him and subscribe right this second. So, okay, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to start off with your PowerPoint? Do you want to chat for a bit? What do you
Let's
have
chat for a bit. Like,
so
if we never actually If we never actually get to the PowerPoint, that's fine. I think we've got enough to talk about.
So what's up with the title, Human Behavioral Ecology? I find that a really good title for like a class. I find that a difficult title to get people on YouTube. Thankfully, you're right after the Ancient Aliens, dude, because that got a lot of people here. And now they're like, Human Behavioral Ecology, are you going to put me to sleep? So tell us why that's such an exciting concept.
Maybe. Okay, so human behavioral ecology is just kind of a premise that we can use to evaluate archaeological information. And it is rooted in the idea that people are not simply reactionary to their environment. They know what they're doing. They have agentive, conscious expertise in their lives.
Okay.
And so they tend to make generally decent decisions. And we use that to, it's really great for dealing with zooarchaeology of foragers. It's kind of designed for dealing with the zooarchaeology of hunter-gatherers and their foodways. Because it gives us a lens to figure out, okay, if everyone's just kind of trying to maximize the caloric, the caloric value of their food, right? Then here's the patterns that we should expect to see. But those patterns never actually play out. And you have these weird little anomalies that happen that beg explanation. And that gives us a way to see the anomalies and start actually trying to figure out, well, what's going on there. So like one of the...
Wait, let me step back and put it in some other terms as well, just because I think it's a concept that people that have not taken environmental archaeology, it's their first time hearing it. So part of the idea is all right, both me and Nathaniel, and they're wondering if you're smoking dank nuggies. I'm hoping not, because it's my channel. But I hope after we're done talking, go do all you wish. But so the idea is like, all right, we both study animal bones. You look at your animal bones and you count up whatever species they are. He studies hunter-gatherers, so they're hunting different animals. Me, I study agriculturists, so they're herding different animals. And it's like, well, what does these counts really mean? How do they tell us about what people are doing in the past? And so a few different ways we can try to interpret this. I actually answered this on my Reddit AMA yesterday in a lot of depth. Is we can try to use, for example, ethnography. We can look at modern groups, pre-mechanized technology, and how they adapt to their environment, what they're doing in their environment. So that's one way to get an explanatory lens for understanding those counts of artifacts or ecofacts. Ecofacts are in a sense, animal bones, plant seeds, etc. And then,
I would say that these archaeological bones are artifacts. People are modifying them.
Of course.
They're both.
But they have their own way of being slightly different than artifacts, and they've oftentimes been treated differently. So I'm cool with the term ecofact as a sort of human.
Oh, I don't mind it.
Impacted environmental thing, like the shallograms I was talking about with Holly yesterday. Though those might be more strictly artifacts to some people. I don't know. Now we're getting into tough questions. But,
we're getting into grad school questions. We don't need to go that far.
But so another lens, so you can do this ethnography, and that can give you one lens to try to interpret. But you could also do experimental archaeology. What happens when I do this, and then you see the results, and then you sort of say, oh, now we can identify this in our artifacts. And then the third one is this one which is kind of like an optimization model, where you start thinking, if you're trying to optimize this kind of output, meaning your calories or the amount of game that you hunt or whatever, like you don't want to just go, like, let's say I'm from Pennsylvania, you don't want to just go hunt all the fucking deer that are out there, because if you do that, they're going to go locally extinct, and then you're not going to have any more deer later on.
Not going to have any more deer.
And so, this is why we have rules on hunting seasons and stuff like that throughout the U.S. And it's one of the reasons. And so, what you do is you think through what's the way to optimize the different aspects of the ecosystem. And once you sort of understand your ecosystem and different ways to optimize it, then you think through how would that manifest itself archaeologically, and you could look for that in the past. And what Nathaniel's trying to say is what's really cool is, yeah, we can see that they're very smart and they're acting in a rational way, but it doesn't always match this kind of optimization strategy, and that we should be thinking about that agency of these past people in a different way for that. So, all right, move on. Where do you go next?
Yeah. So yeah, like you say, that they're intelligent, knowledgeable actors in their environment. They know what they're doing, but also it's not like they have any impetus to actually maximize, because this whole thing is an evolutionary model, right? And evolution doesn't trend towards optimization, it trends towards sufficiency.
Yeah.
What is good enough, and then you stop. Like, if they were actually optimizing their caloric returns, they'd hunt everything to extinction, and then they die.
Yeah.
So
that's actually interesting. Yeah, because with evolution, oftentimes you want that biodiversity because that makes you more resilient. So what you want is that sufficiency so that that biodiversity can then flourish within what's adaptive to that environment.
Yeah. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is that the way this has been operationalized in the past is very calorie centric. But if we actually think about people in the past, in terms of communities of people, right? These are not calorie seeking, sexless, ageless drones moving across a landscape. They're communities, they're families, they're people.
Of course.
And different people have different dietary needs. So like pregnant women need a lot of different nutrients beyond just raw calories. They need a lot of vitamin A and, calcium and iron and these kinds of things. They're turning food into people. That's a
very cynical way to put this. You sound like one of those ancient aliens guys. It's sort of like you're just growing them in the lab. You're turning food into people.
It's an old Modern Family reference that made me laugh really hard. But yeah, they need very different. They have very different dietary needs than a 20-year-old man. So being able to see, like, there's been a lot of talk about, like, why would people go after all of these like freshwater mussels? They're such low caloric return food. Why even bother with them? They must be starving. Well, no, if you actually look what's in freshwater mussels, they're really high in those nutrients I was talking about. They're high in iron and vitamin A and all of these things. And people, especially growing children and pregnant women, need those foodstuffs. So trying to understand a behavioral ecology of a community rather than the very early manifestations of this as a bunch of calorie-seeking drones moving across the landscape trying to find as much food as they can, I think it's a more nuanced way of understanding how to operationalize behavioral ecology. So when you start to see these patterns where, like, oh, we've got these big spikes in these very low rank foodstuffs that they're low rank because they're low in calories, well, they might be higher ranked because of other reasons that we need to consider.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So let's get an example here. Let's think of a good example in the real world from archaeology, ideally. Though if you want to start with something that's not archaeology, that works too. Do you have anything in your PowerPoint to pull up, or do you have an example of something you've studied that would be a good example?
Yeah, let me see what. That's the wrong one. What slide number that was?
Yeah. Bada boom. We have.
Two, three, four, five. Just go ahead and skip on down to like. Yeah, skip down to 15.
15.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, so we have a lovely line graph here looking at what? Squirrels? Or, oh, I see, different species. And this is, what's 1 to 5? It's the ordinal rank. I can tell that.
So, no. Let me explain this. So what we've got here is what's called a diet breadth model. Okay. And I don't know if you're familiar with using diet breadth models at all.
I don't use them, yeah. So you're looking at species richness or something?
So basically what you're doing is you're taking all of the species you've got and you line them up from left to right so that deer over there, that's the highest ranked animal. You get the most calories per hour of work you do for that animal.
Okay.
And then you're basically just going down the line. So the next best return rate is raccoon, and then after that it's gray fox, and then it's wild turkey, and going on down the line. This is coming from my master's thesis.
Okay.
And then this axis over here, the 0 up to 5, that's MNI counts. And I can explain why I used a minimum number of individuals.
Don't make me mad. Don't make me mad.
I'll explain why in a bit. But basically the idea here is that if people are optimizing, then you're going to have this curve that's really high over where deer is.
Yeah.
And then it's going to taper off as you get down to like squirrels and rats.
And instead what you're
And-
seeing is a focus on deer and squirrel.
Deer, and then
less of a
squirrels
focus on the
pops
other.
up on the end.
Yeah.
And so something's going on there. And there's a few possible explanations for that. One of them that I tend to like is that you can spend all day sitting in the woods hoping to get a deer for, you know, to take back to camp. Or you might have other things to do with your day. And you don't have time to be sitting around in the woods, maybe or maybe not actually successfully killing a deer and so on. Squirrels are everywhere. They don't particularly mind human presence, and you can, if you know what you're doing, can get them like that. So
Yeah.
it's the fast food of the archaic.
It's like that game I used to play. What was that game where you're this character and you set up traps and stuff, and squirrels or hedgehogs were really easy to catch. You know, they just fall into the trap. The rabbits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now the other possibility, and one that I actually like even more than that, is kids. Kids have to learn how to be adults. And
I mean, some of them at
ki-
least.
well, yeah. I mean, if you're an archaeologist, you never actually have to grow up. But but yeah, so like parents have to teach kids how to, you know, do adult things, and squirrels are fairly safe and ubiquitous, and you know, they might bite the kid, but it's not like the kid's gonna get kicked in the face like a deer and kill them. So
Yeah,
this
of
is
course.
this is the hunting training wheels for children is another possibility. Now, the reason, Flint, that I used MNI instead of NISP, and I did it both ways, don't worry, I did it both ways, but the reason I did it,
Make it so simple enough for other people.
so
So wait.
I need to
think
explain
the first
MNI.
other people need to understand is there's two different ways to count animal bones.
yeah,
in a
I need to
sense.
explain MNI.
One of them is you just count up all your bones. In which
So,
case, he
here's how
has
many
a lot
deer
more
bones
than
you've
4
got.
deer
Yeah.
bones. He has a lot of deer bones. On the other hand, what this is an estimation of is with all the deer bones he has, different body parts, different side of the body, different sort of age even, he has what could at a minimum be, even though it's several hundred bones, it could be from 4 deer. It could also be from more, but that's the minimum number of individuals. And so that's what the difference is. So why are you going with minimum number of individuals?
All right. So me and people in my grad committee had this exact argument. The reason I'm going with MNI is that I'm dealing with animals of very radically different body sizes. And so if I take a deer tibia and smash it into 10 pieces, I still probably have 7 or 8 identifiable specimens that are deer tibia, and I can say this is deer tibia, because really nothing else in the Southeast is the same, like has the same size bones as deer. So I can say pretty confidently these are all part of a deer tibia. Might have 2 or 3 that I can't, but if I do the same thing with a raccoon tibia, I am lucky to get 2 out of the 10 that are identifiable as raccoon. So if I go with straight just number of identified deer bones, that is going to inflate the deer so high that I can't really see any other patterns. It's going to happen to other animals in these contexts also. Some are just more identifiable than others. So it's not like a situation where if you're comparing like sheep and goats and, you know, other much more similarly sized and shaped animals, you wouldn't really need to deal with the MNI. You could just go at number of individual specimens.
I do more MNE.
Oh, minimum number of elements?
Yeah. But now we're just getting too detailed. Let's move on. This is the kind of stuff that like you got to be at least an advanced undergrad at Zooarch to really get your head in on, and it works better when you can lay out a skeleton.
True.
But yeah, so that's a cool example. I think that's interesting. So all right, I'm going to play devil's advocate for you. Could it just
Go
be
ahead.
that the landscape had more deer and squirrel and not the other animals?
It truly could. It truly could. But also looking at, and that's also something that we have to consider with these diet breadth models, is that the null hypothesis diet breadth model, the one where it just like starts really high and then curves off to nothing, assumes that all of these animals are equally represented across the landscape, which obviously is also not true. So that's something else that this model might be showing us.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and that's again the utility of the diet breadth model. It's we have this expected curve pattern that never actually winds up playing out. And so it shows us things that we might look at to try to explain in the environment.
And to try to explain human culture and behavior.
Yeah.
So maybe children are
Exactly.
hunting squirrels. Go kids!
Yeah, exactly. But that's also just like the cool thing about zooarchaeology is how many different things that you can attack analytically using the same data set. I can look at the data set one way, looking at foodways. I can then cut it and look at it a different way to look at environmental patterns. I can look at animal processing. Are they just butchering the animal and eating the meat, or are they breaking open the bones for marrow, or are they then crushing those bones down to boil them for bone grease? To really like pull all of that resource out. And if they are doing any one of those things, what does that mean?
So wait, quick question. It was the diet breath model?
Yeah, diet breadth model. This was kind of pioneered in archaeology back in the 80s. Winterhalter and Smith. There's a whole book about it. And I've got a couple of videos about this entire behavioral ecology premise on the channel already.
And so, I mean, yeah, for me, because I'm always studying not hunter-gatherers, I'm studying farmers. So it's a little different. I'm looking at how those animals are managed. So it's a different sort of question there.
For anyone watching, like me and Flint are at as far opposite ends of the zooarchaeological spectrum as it's possible to be.
But on the other hand, we're both zooarchaeologists, so we're on the same spectrum of being archaeologists.
We are on the same spectrum. We're just on the opposite ends of it.
And that's why your hair is much longer than my hair. Though my hair is kind of long, it goes down below my shoulders, right?
Sure.
It's funny. People think I'm like the people that don't like me online. They think I wear the hat because I'm like going bald, and it's just like, no, I'm not fucking going bald, man. I just like the hat, like.
I mean, some people are hat guys.
I've always worn hats. It's just how I've always been, and so yeah. So okay, you have another fun Zooarch thing to share with us. Let's see what we got. I'm gonna put you on the spot. I put David on the spot yesterday with dog stuff.
Oh sure. Check out okay, so the weirdest thing from the site that I
tell me another way to look at the same assemblage even. That could be good.
Go take a look at the very last slide 18.
Yeah, on it. There we go.
So what do you notice about this little collection of bones?
Well, there's a whole lot of mandibles, and I think they're all the same side, it looks like, too. So they're what? They're left side of the jaw. There's...
And the illustration off to the right, I do have to shout this guy out. His name's Brian Serway, Serway. I just I love his illustrations, and I like putting them in slides.
Okay. So, but does the illustration have to do with a set of bones? Because I can't see.
It does. There is a connection.
So I see a humerus. Is that a second humerus there in the top middle, or is that a femur? That's another humerus, right?
Yep.
And what are we looking at? Like raccoon or something, or dogs? Raccoon?
No, this is all the gray fox.
Gray fox. Oh, duh, it's written up there. I'm looking at the bones. I don't study North American fauna, so yeah. Okay, you got a radius and ulna. You got two humeri. I can't tell if the humerus. You have two ulnas actually, and they are. So I'm guessing by the description you're trying to say that they're buried in a sort of really contracted position?
No. What happened, what's going on here is I've got, of all of the gray fox bones that I have from my entire analysis, only one of them is from the right side of the body.
I noticed that with all the mandibles being the same size.
I took that picture just as a reference picture, and then I was looking at it again A couple of days later,
I just
I'm
want to
like,
point out, I said all those mandibles were left fucking sided, right?
yeah, you're right.
All right.
You're absolutely right.
See,
There's
guys, I
only-
know what I'm talking about, even if I didn't know it was a gray fox. You're putting me on the spot. No, that's actually, yeah. So that's out of like a dozen specimens. They're all left-sided except for one.
And there's actually more fox
more, too.
specimens in here that weren't in the same bag. Some of them, they'd gone through and pre-sorted some stuff, and they had put some fox bones in the raccoon bag and some raccoon bones in the fox bag. So I had to go, when I was going through and doing my analysis, I was, fixing that.
Yeah. No, I was just changing the size because people asked to see it larger.
Cool.
Oh yeah, that's all I was doing. So if you notice here for people that you can actually look at is all of these mandibles are the same side. The reason I knew that is because of this concave, so it's, you can't see my hand. Concave means it's dipping in rather than bulging out. So you have this concave on the sort of hinge of the mandible. And then I know what side it is because the exterior of mandibles have these little holes in them, these like foramina. And so that's how I was able to say it was left side. And so what's really weird is there's clearly a selection going on here because you have a whole lot of animal remains from gray fox, but they're all left-sided. So you think that this is ritual deposition, or you think it's this site, they divided the fox in half and this site got left-sided ones and another site got right-sided ones? What are your thoughts?
See, my suspicion is that the rest of those foxes are still in that cave, but they've been deposited differently somehow. The only thing that I'm really willing to say, because of who raised me archaeologically, is this is not about food. They might have eaten this fox, but the fact that all of these elements, like the cranial elements and all, like everything else, is being buried in one spot, and the right side stuff is, showing up somewhere else, with the exception of one bone, is very strange.
So there's a paper you should read if you want a comparison to the Greek world. At the Sanctuary of Zeus at Nemea, there's a hero shrine there. I'm blanking on the name of the hero, but the animal remains were studied by Michael McKinnon. And so I think the title of the article is Side Matters, because they're all selecting the same body, the same side, anatomical side, for this deposition in this pit. Of course, they were all eaten, but obviously side mattered in terms of the ritual that they were performing and how this material was deposited and buried. Yeah.
So, of course, we also have to back up and be like, okay, look, we've got a sample size of 1 on this behavior, right? Like, in order to actually show that this is not just a statistical accident, I would want to see this kind of pattern show up at another site somewhere in the same region.
Sure.
I would be like, it's interesting, it's intriguing, it's something that I think is worth investigating for at other sites in the Ozarks, but that's why I'm not willing to say this is like some kind of ritual behavior or anything like that.
Well, at this point you have a hypothesis of that, because you have a pattern.
It is a hypothesis.
Yeah, it's a hypothesis based on a pretty robust data set. You have just showing here, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 specimens. And
that tiny proximal ulna that you've got there just above the top right jaw, that's the only right side element that I have for fox at all.
Okay, wait a second. Let me turn this off. Aha, this one up here, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. What? I'm turning the wrong thing off.
Oh, shoot. Flint, I thought I was plugged in. My battery's about to die. Let me plug my computer in real quick.
Do it. Yeah, so I mean, this kind of selection, it actually happens across the world at different times. And it's oftentimes due to ritual behavior, for whatever reason. Ritual can mean a lot of different things, though, so take that term with a grain of salt, everybody. So wait, somebody asked what this specimen right down here was. Is that a piece of cranium?
Bottom right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a piece of the cranium. Yeah.
Okay.
You can see the orbital poking out
that's
there.
what I thought, but I just, since it's a photo. And I don't know foxes. Yes. Okay, that's a really cool one. I like this, and I think it gives a sense of the different ways that we can also approach animal remains. And this is something I'm teaching Zooarch next term for master students here. And so, one of the goals is obviously to train them how to identify and side and speciate and age and sex and all that kind of stuff, the material. But the other goal is to try to get them to think about different ways we can interpret this stuff. And so, for everybody here, one of the cool things is we can actually interpret the material in a bunch of different ways. The first example that Nathaniel gave me was largely about economy. What are they hunting, and what could that mean about their sort of hunting behavior, and potentially even teaching children how to hunt and stuff like that. While this one here, it's already hunted, it's already eaten, but it's deposited with this weird pattern, which could be, the hypothesis is, indicative of some sort of ritual behavior. Which, as I said, it has examples in all over the world of people selecting certain sides of the body for ritual reasons, like at that sanctuary of Nemea in Greece where we saw that. So yeah, so I think that's key. Thank you, Taylor. I'm sorry, you got to go tip Nathaniel now. He said, I love both of your channels. Keep up the fantastic and real archaeology. But no, thank you so much, Taylor. So yeah, I think that's key. And other people are talking about how I have some good chat moderators here kicking out the trolls, because we have very little trolling going on. I have to say, I'm very pleased with how this is going. Yeah.
So you want to take on another hypothesis?
For this stuff?
For not for this, for something else entirely.
Yeah, show me a slide.
Go check out slide 6, because that's going to set us up.
Okay, let me make me disappear and make you smaller. 1 second.
All right. So the site that we're talking about here is right below the inn and the word Arkansas on that map.
So right here, okay.
Yeah, that's Saltpeter Cave. That's the site that I did my master's work on.
Okay, cool.
So this is coming from a paper that Deniston et al. About environmental reconstruction for this, kind of late Paleo through Archaic time period. The time that I'm dealing with specifically is like the 9,000 through about the 5,000 years ago.
So this section of this graph.
Exactly. And so what we see right now, these days, this environment, I'm actually in it right now, is oak hickory forest.
Okay.
Very healthy, deciduous, lots of good food. When you get into the mid-Holocene...
So 1 second, just to show people on this graph, because I think it's important to walk through these graphs. So what we're seeing is you're looking at time on this graph from right now, 0 years ago, all the way down to 12,000 years ago. And each of these are showing different ways that we can understand the environment here. So as Nathaniel mentioned, right now it's largely a deciduous forest. And it has been, for like the last 1,500 years, it looks like.
Well, sort of, kind of. What this graph is really showing us, what these graphs actually are really showing us, is big picture around 9,000, 8,000 years ago, we get this incursion of grassland. We start to see this forest canopy start to break up a little bit, and the prairie starts to move in, based on these various proxies that are coming from the map that you see on the right.
So wait a second. So I got to ask, just because now I need to know some stuff. Obviously, on the right, this looks like it's pollen that it's presenting on this right here.
Yeah, that's coming from Couple of Ponds. So if you look on the map, that's the X that says CP, and then Oldfield Swamp, that's the X that says OF.
And what's Poachii? I should know that, but I don't right now. That's the type of grass?
Those are grasses, yeah.
Okay. And then this step/deciduous ratio, I'm also guessing, is based on proxies from pollen, where certain...
That is from faunal. That is from faunal material. They're looking at different wild species, or wild taxa really, and looking at what environmental niches they are best associated with, and creating a ratio for that to look at the fluctuations. And they're getting that from
excavations at all these sites on this map on the right?
Those are coming from excavations at the 2 black dots.
So from MS and RS, okay.
Yeah.
And then...
So again...
Well,
It's very,
yeah.
very broad regional kind of a thing, but they've got them from a few different spots in the landscape.
Yeah.
And then the last one, which is the most complicated one, and you've touched on this a little bit. This is from Speleothem. This is
Okay.
looking so
So
basically
wait,
the
wait, wait,
premise.
let me break that up for people. What this is looking at is the isotope ratios within a stalactite or stalagmite in a cave system, which can track sort of the water that is dissolving the calcite and then reconstituting it. And in this case, they're looking at the stable carbon ratios, and stable carbon will probably come from the kind of plants that are in the soil that's, I guess, the rainwater is going through. I've not seen much carbon in speleothems. What is it tracking?
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was a
yeah. So
guess.
basically, the premise here is that up on the surface you've got plants, and you've got two fundamental classes of plants. You've got the C3 plants, which don't like carbon 13, and then you've got the C4 plants, which are grasses.
Yeah.
And these warm environment grasses are totally cool photosynthesizing with C13 carbon.
Okay.
They don't mind it. So when you've got that carbon isotope increasing, that's showing an increase in grassland. Now, yeah, these grasses that are up on the surface, they die, they decay, rainwater falls, it percolates through, it picks up those carbons, it drags them down underground, and it creates these stalagmites and stalactites.
Okay.
And those carbons start getting deposited as that stalactite/stalagmite is growing. And so it's a record of what kinds of plants are going on at the very surface.
Yeah, and so just to come back for a second for people, this is sort of how we put together a big picture of environmental change over time. As you can see that this sort of graph, it uses 3 completely different methods. So it's using the pollen from 2 different cores, it's using the animal remains from 2 different sites, and then it's using isotope analysis on these stalactites and stalagmites in what, 2 different caves, the ON and the BCC, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Onondaga
Yeah,
and
that's the
Beckham Creek Cave. And so it's using these multiple independent lines of evidence that we then use to sort of reconstruct the environment in different periods of time in a region like this. And so this is kind of exactly how we start understanding, because you go to Arkansas or Missouri today, it's gonna, as Nathaniel mentioned, it's gonna look very different. It's deciduous forest, but we know that at other periods in the past it was different. And so this is how we can kind of track it using multiple lines of evidence. And it's still a hypothesis because there's only, what, 6 points on the map right now. I'm sure it's being slowly filled in by other research projects and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so what all of these data sets do is they give us these big kind of regional proxies, but it doesn't tell us anything local, like really, really local.
Yeah.
But also, I want to point out with the speleothem analysis, those stalactites and the stalagmites, those are great for when you don't have pollen records.
Yes.
Those caves are in karst environments where swamps don't tend to like to accumulate. So we don't have good pollen records for.
So you notice here, these swamps are over here because that's where you can only get these kind of cores in areas that have actually been a swamp or a pond or a lake or something like that. As soon as it goes
for
dry,
long periods of time.
Yeah, for a long period of time. On the other hand, caves end up in a different kind of environment. So limestone environments is where they're formed. And so you get that in different areas of this larger region, because the larger region has different geology and different environment itself as well. Yeah.
So yeah, this creates the hypothesis that one of the guiding hypotheses of my graduate work was, okay, if we're seeing this shift from a more forested environment to this more grassland environment, I would expect us to also see changes in what animals people are hunting. We should start seeing those grassland taxa start to show up in the assemblage.
That makes sense. So wait, we have a quick question. I think I know the answer to this, but let's make sure we get this right. What's the significance of the aragonite right here? I'm guessing it's because it means that stalactite and stalagmite is forming in a different way at that period of time, and so therefore it's not appropriate for this analysis, or? If
I remember correctly, basically that's like it's an imperfection in the structure. There's
Yeah.
something wrong there where
And
they
that's why
can't
it's blank here, and it's because
yeah, it's
instead of
it's a
forming,
blank
I
spot
think
where they
instead
couldn't
of forming
get data.
calcite, it's forming aragonite. Is if I think I've worked with climatologists that study this stuff. I don't
Yeah.
personally study it though, so we're also the wrong people to be 100% sure on. Okay, so
Right.
this is how you put together the environment in your region to start asking the questions that you ask of the material you study. So should we move on to that now? So we see this change. You're talking about this transition. Let me get this right over here. In a sense,
Exactly.
from about 9,000 years ago, a little later, from deciduous forest into this C4 rich prairie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it might be wrong to characterize it as a C4 rich prairie, right? What might actually just be happening is that the forest is breaking up enough that more grasses are coming in. It doesn't mean all the trees are gone
Yeah.
or it's opened up into this like oak savanna or anything. It just means that we're seeing enough of a shift that we can see it play out in the pollens and the speleothems.
And I imagine the faunal stuff.
Well, one would imagine, but pop over to slide 12.
Slide 12 right here. All right. So now we're looking at the total counts of bones up to 100%. Let me get myself out of the way. So we have...
So what I did was I took all the identifiable taxa that I had and gave them a count for the best associated environment that they come from. From just things like raccoons that'll live everywhere. The forest is mostly coming from wild turkey. The forest edge is coming mostly from deer. But what you notice is that...
Wait a second. Really important, though, that I need clarity on. Give me some dates for these periods so that we can link them in time to what we were just looking at. What's early archaic?
Right. The early archaic, you're dealing with like that very like bottom of those graphs, that like 9,000 plus kind of time period.
So this is early archaic up to
I believe around 8,500, somewhere in that ballpark. It varies from region to region.
Yeah.
And then the middle archaic is that mid Holocene, the hypsothermal, that dry arid era, where you're dealing with that 8,500 up to I believe 5,800, something like that.
Okay.
In that ballpark. So you should be seeing So you should be seeing a pretty stark shift from those forest woodland taxa into at least a better representation of those open grassland prairie kind of taxa, and there's no such pattern.
Yeah, instead you're getting more of the edge. It does start creeping in over time.
Which
is why you were suggesting it's actually not prairie. It's actually just a less dense deciduous forest with more grass.
Exactly, because if it's really opening up, we should start seeing bison show up. We should see ornate box turtles start to come in. We should see spotted skunks start to pop in. These more prairie plains associated taxa should start moving in. There is another site in the Ozarks. It's further up north in Missouri, called Little Freeman Cave, that has one bison bone in it, and it's like right at the edge of where the prairie should be showing up anyway. But even then, so this leaves us with two alternatives. Either our proxies for environmental change are deceiving us into thinking that this hypsothermal had more impacts than it actually did.
Okay.
Or it could be that the people living in these environments chose to stick with their traditional food ways and refuse to really change that much because they didn't actually have to. They still had access to their ancestral foods. And one of the other things that I like at least thinking about is foodways as a reflection of identity. Like I talk about, we eat with an accent as much as we speak with an accent. And so we might be looking at a situation where the people living in the Ozarks are saying, we don't eat bison, that's plains people food. We don't mess with that. It might not be that, though. It might just be that the forest canopy is just breaking up so subtly that the bison aren't actually coming in very much, and they're sticking with what they know.
Yeah, that definitely makes some sense. Could it also be the specific sites that you're studying, that they're only occupied seasonally, and so you're only getting certain seasons of the year represented? Is that a possibility?
I love that you asked that question because I have a slide for it.
Oh, wow. All right, let's do it.
Slide 8.
Slide 8. All right, so now we're looking at the different kinds of species and what seasons they're available in, I imagine. And it looks
There's
to me
season availability, but there's some other proxies also. So you can look at the tooth eruption patterns on white-tailed deer because all deer are born within like a few weeks of each other. So if you know the age of death, you can figure out the season of death as well. And so what I have up here is like along the top, you've got your months, January, February, March, April, May, going all the way down. And then the things that are filled in are what this proxy, like what season that relates to. And if you look way down at the early Archaic, you see that we only have proxies for winter months. Turtles are absent. And any other like warm weather, the kinds of creatures that are available in warm weather environments, they're not there. So we only have proxies for winter in the early Archaic, but then you get up into the mid Archaic and things start to blow up and you start to see people there.
I disagree.
All right.
I disagree very strongly. I think only when you hit middle Archaic too, I agree with you. You have clearly material that must be there in the winter and clearly material that must be there in the summer. But when you look at this material right here, the gray fox could be there in March. Doesn't have to have been hunted in April and May, right?
Oh no, the gray fox is there because it's perinatal.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is you could actually, it doesn't have to represent all 3 of these months. They could have only been there in May, or in March, I mean, and gotten it. Same thing with this. We have nothing here that necessarily has to have been here between April and September.
That is true.
And so it's still, at least in this phase, could be winter. It's just that, I mean, but then again, you have a lot of this ornate box turtle. So that does worry me. And that would be the one worrisome thing that I see here as potentially representative of it being around longer. Do these guys, they burrow? So they're buried, or they're hibernation, I guess, at the time in the winter.
That's they go into what's called brumation, which is like a hibernation.
Okay. Yeah. So I see what you're saying, but I see it in the middle Archaic as less clear and much clearer.
It is certainly a less clear signal. I will allow it. It's a less clear signal, but also the presence of, like you said, all those box turtles. It would be surprising if people are like jumping on the box turtles right at the very beginning of the summer and never touch them again.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially the number. If there were just a few, I'd be more adamant. But there are a lot there, so I'll let you interpret it. You studied it.
So, but yeah, and this gets to the core of the Zooarch is like, you've got to be really careful with what you say your data is saying, because then Flint will take you to task over it if you are,
or whoever is peer reviewing you, of course, right?
It's appreciated. It is appreciated. And in the thesis,
I like how in the chat they're saying I'm flexing, and it's like, no, he came here to try to get me to interpret his data. He said, read this stuff. That's how he started. I'm not trying to flex. If anything, I'm trying to show how peer review and critique works among people who like each other. I like Nathaniel. I think he does great work. So I want to help improve his argument. That's my goal.
And for the people in the chat, we love this shit. We absolutely thrive on this stuff.
And it's like, me reviewing Graham Hancock, I would hope he would learn from the peer review that I give him. And he doesn't, which shows that he's not my peer, because if he was my peer, he would actually be taking some of these ideas that I mentioned to heart.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense.
You know, and instead he's just doing his own thing. He doesn't care what actual archaeologists think. We, on the other hand, we want to make sure our argument is tested and improved and critiqued through multiple rounds of presenting it in papers and then publishing it and getting reviews and whatnot. Yeah. I know you're being sarcastic, dude. I know. Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, now I kind of lost my train of thought on that. Thanks, Flint. No, you're good. But yeah, this is just like The other thing is when I do these seasonality indicators, I try to put like some buffer on either side of them just to expand them a little bit beyond what they actually are, because I don't want to be more precise than I actually should
Yes,
be.
and some of these animals, they're getting their behavior in the modern day, and it is
Yeah.
within the realm of plausibility that animal behavior seasonally has changed some in the last 6,000 to 7,000 years. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So I give myself like I eyeball a 2-week buffer on either side, basically.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. No, I like this, and I like this kind of example of how even in a sense, you see this change in the use of the landscape, but it's much more subtle than we'd expect. And that goes back to that idea of human behavioral ecology, where you're looking for this optimization. In the past, in the 70s and 80s, when archaeologists first developed some of these methods, they got too caught up in what we call today environmental determinism, where they thought that we could just look at the environment and then discern what human behavior was, because the environment is what discerns what people do. Sorry, I'm stopping this. You can't see me. Everybody can still see you just fine. It's just because I'm resetting my RAM here and making it, my computer sucks. And so now we realize that actually we can't just discern. The environment does not predict exactly how humans behave in the past. Instead, we need to look and see what the hell they actually do. This, by the way, is one reason why a lot of Jared Diamond's work is really not very good. He's not an archaeologist, he's a biologist, and his approach to writing for the public about human history and prehistory is very much tied up in environmental determinism. And
well, there's a reason for that. He studies birds.
yeah, exactly. He's an ecologist and biologist. He's not an archaeologist. And so he's getting wrapped up in that kind of environmental determinism, when in fact the field, we've learned our mistakes. You have to know the history of archaeology
Some of us
if you
have.
want to
Some
do
of us
archaeology. Okay,
some
but
of us
most
keep-
of us have. Yeah.
I mean, I catch myself making those thought mistakes all the time, but I have the theoretical tools to catch myself when I start doing that. And I've also got, colleagues around me who, if I start going off on an environmentally deterministic kind of track, will hear it and will reel me back in.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's really easy to start becoming environmental deterministic, because you have all these variables for the environment and you're thinking through what can happen, and you start seeing it because that's what you would want to do, right? And so like it's very easy, but this is again why we do this kind of critique and peer review and whatnot, is to try to make sure that we temper our arguments so they make sense with the evidence and we're not just getting trapped in our own mind. Right?
It's really easy to start believing the stories you've been telling yourself for weeks and weeks and weeks as you're going through the data. You have to have these outside voices telling you, okay,
exactly.
well, hold up.
That's why I don't publish anything until I've gone and given it a conference paper, usually 2 or 3 times, so that I get feedback from different colleagues who look at it in different ways. And then same thing when I write it before I send it off to a journal, I'll have some people read it, usually more than one, usually 3 or 4. And then you have the anonymous peer reviewers, 2 to 3 people, and the editor who also makes decisions, or editors. And so, you have in the end, even if I'm the only author on a paper, you have like 15, 20 people that have critiqued it and added to it and given input on it that have helped refine it so that it's as strong as it can be. And so, I think that that's really key for everybody to understand, because they see this public critique and stuff like that, and it's like, nah, this is how actual science works, bro.
These are not personal attacks.
Yeah,
this is
what it is.
In fact, when you hear someone say, okay, you just said that thing and I don't think you're right, that means that they actually paid attention enough to actually understand what you're talking about, which is what we want. But anyway, so so what I think, backing up to where we were a bit ago, though.
You got about 10 minutes. So what do you want to end on?
Well, what I think is actually going on here. If we are seeing an environmental shift where the prairie is expanding and the forest is getting more patchy, we'll say, I think people might be going to this and other bluff shelter sites like it that are still in really forested environments where the food that they're used to going after is just still present in abundance. And that's why it used to be very seasonally occupied, and then it becomes much more consistently occupied.
Yeah.
Because the stuff they're used to is it's kind of a hub for
That makes sense.
that food stuff. So they go from more of a frequent movement settlement model to a more what we call like logistical model, where people are going to a main base camp, spending a couple of months there, and then going out into the hinterlands and bringing stuff back from that like really rich area, and then moving on to another long-term base camp.
Okay.
That is the interpretation that I would put forward. And also, I did some intersite analysis with some other sheltered sites that also have well-published Zooarch data, and kind of compared all these sites. And I think that's what's going on, because it really looks from that intersite analysis that the biggest determining factor for what people are hunting is what's extremely local, like within a few miles of the cave.
Yeah.
You don't see a whole lot of change of foodways over time in the way that we would expect. If like everyone in the region is like shifting a little bit towards prairie species, that would mean one thing, but we don't see that. They're not really shifting in an environmentally determined direction if our environmental reconstruction proxies are correct.
That makes sense. And instead, what we're seeing is the change, like you said, it's less seasonal. It's more like their catchment areas have gotten wider, which is also interesting if you think about it, where in a sense, with the environmental change and you want to be conservative with what you eat, you want to eat what your ancestors ate, well, then maybe one solution to that is to make your catchment area be wider. And so it's still there in abundance, but you might need to go a little further, and therefore, and I don't know. Yeah, but this is a good way to think about it. Yeah.
Or to just decrease your mobility and really only specifically target places where your food always is.
Yeah.
Earlier on, if that food stuff was much more evenly distributed across the landscape, there's no reason to hunker down in one spot. You can just kind of hop around, and that gives you access to more restricted resources like toolstone, like flint napping stone.
That makes sense.
If you're moving around with greater frequency,
like this bad boy right here. James Green made this for me. James Green's awesome. Check him out on Twitter. This one was made by my dad.
How old were you when you started flint napping?
I never got good at it. It's one of my big regrets is I never got good at it. Yeah, because my dad was one of the better flint nappers in the world for a while. And, I started to do a little bit of it when I was like a teenager. But at that point, I didn't want to be an archaeologist.
Right.
And so then I moved out of the house, and I guess a couple times I picked it up a little bit on site, but like I never really got into it, which is, my name's fucking Flint. I know a lot about lithics. I actually do. I grew up with them all around me and everything, but I don't know how to flint nap for the life of me. I gotta somehow find one of my dad's students to teach me now that my dad's no longer around. Yeah.
When I was an undergrad, my mentor, who was a zooarchaeologist also, his name is Tom White.
Okay.
He basically sat us down and said, look, if I wanted to teach you all the stuff that I'm interested in, I would just focus on fish bones and call it a day. But y'all have to have a career. So you have to learn stone tools. You have to.
Yeah, especially for CRM. Yeah.
Especially working in America in general, but he always made the point, like the most common artifact type is the chipstone, debitage.
Yeah. Like in other areas of the world, it's pottery, but yeah, it's either chipstone or pottery. I mean,
yeah.
It's also why studying food is so good, because like literally everything from archaeology is food. It's like, it
all comes back to food.
It all does. Bill, if you're watching, I'll let you in a second. I'm going to kick Nathaniel off in 2 minutes, and then I will use the bathroom and get a beer. And then I'll have Carl and Bill join me to talk about archaeology and social media. But no, this is really cool, and I hope that I might need to sneeze. No, it went away. I hope we do this again on your channel and on my channel again, and we talk some more of this Zooarch stuff. Maybe we could even, I can twist your arm into doing something for my module next term. Since you have
Oh,
some cool
would absolutely love
American
to.
stuff, I think that would be really good to expose some of these British students to some of these different ways of thinking about zooarchaeology, because we're focusing mostly on domesticated animals and whatnot. And I think
Sure.
having some examples from sort of hunter-gatherers and human behavioral ecology would be really useful for them to have some better exposure to than I can give them.
It's absolutely wild because in my graduate program, I was the only Zooarch who did, pre-colonial anything. Everyone else was doing, domesticated sheep. Actually, my good friend Bridget, she's doing dental isotopes in caprines
Okay.
up in like the Chesapeake area. That's her deal.
Yeah.
So some
I did
overlap
that
with you
here
on
with
that.
caprines
Yeah.
from Greece, but yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
she's trying to figure out if they are grazing their caprines in salt marshes. So she's
Okay,
looking at some isotopes to do with the teeth on that.
that makes sense.
But yeah, anyone watching, go do zooarchaeology. You'll never run out of stuff to talk about.
There's so much cool Zooarch stuff, and there'll be a lot of that on my channel coming up because I'm teaching it. So I'm hoping to do some stuff from the lab, because I'll have access to the whole
Yeah.
lab, and I can just like start holding up bones and explaining stuff. And some of those videos can be used for teaching sometimes, though they're going to want me to do it in person. Obviously, I contractually have to. But if COVID breaks out again, it's perfect. But,
Right.
But either way, I'll still do some of that for the YouTube because I think that'll be really good. And at that point, we'll get you on again. We'll get David on again. We'll get some other.
We got to
Zooarchs
talk
that I
about
know.
dogs building mounds at some point.
Yeah, exactly. How to test that. That was a fun chat we had. Yeah. All right. Well, Nathaniel, it was really good. I mean, I met you at the essays last time, but it was good to meet you again over Zoom. And
Yeah.
I'll chat to you soon. We'll have you back on. I'm going to let Bill in, and he'll entertain you all while I run to the bathroom and get a beer. And we'll talk about archaeology and social media. So thanks so
Cool.
much. And
Thank
see
you
you
so
later.
much for having me.
Yeah.
I feel very out of place here.
Why? What do you mean?
Bigger fish in this pond for sure. But
No,
thank you
you're
for having
great.
me.
What are you
again.
talking about? Don't be too humble. Come on. All right. Ciao.
I'm Appalachian. I was raised that way.
Okay.
See you around.
Ciao.
Let's see.
We have Bill here.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm good. I've been going for 2 hours, so let me just run to the bathroom really quickly and get a beer. You can entertain everybody. Just introduce yourself or whatever.
Cool.
Carl, I think, should be jumping on in any minute. I'll let him in when I get back, though. So I'll just be gone for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, the crowd is mine.
The crowd is yours, exactly.
I promise I will be careful. I'll be kind. Well, how's it going, crowd? I'm gonna try and bring this up on my phone, the actual YouTube stream, so I can see your lovely faces as well. Well, I can't see your faces, but you get it. You get me. You know what I mean. Hi there. For those of you who don't know, I'm Bill Farley. I'm a professor of anthropology and archaeology in the United States. I work at Southern Connecticut State University, which is a regional public university in the state. If you watched the interview, a discussion with Kenny Fader yesterday or the day before, whenever that was, we actually work at sort of sister schools. He worked most of his career at Central, which is nearby, and just like Kenny, actually, my specialty is in Connecticut archaeology. So my actual day job research is I work in southern New England, primarily on sites in Connecticut, and primarily on sites from the colonial period, from the last 400 years or so, particularly interested in interactions between early European settlers to the region, the Dutch and the English, especially where I'm at, and Native American groups who had already been living there for many thousands of years, such as the Quinnipiac and the Pequot and some of the other Mohegan, some of the other Connecticut tribal groups. But the way I get involved in all this is I do community archaeology, do archaeology kind of in my own backyard. Already, that's what I've always done. So I've always been interested in public archaeology and public communication, science communication, but it's sort of that local level, which is still what I do now. I still do that. I still go talk to school groups and I do historical societies and blah, blah, blah. But I, just found myself getting more and more interested in this sort of public archaeology on this broader scale. So during the pandemic, I started a YouTube channel, which is called Archaeology Tube. And so if you go to youtube.com youtube.com/@archaeologytube, and sure we'll drop it in the chat, or if somebody wants to drop it in the chat for me, that would be great. And I'm sort of one of the smaller to medium-sized channels on here. I have about, I don't know, something like 7,000 or so subscribers. Believe it or not, I had more subscribers in Flint until like 2 months ago. I don't know what happened when he's had this meteoric rise. Who knows what happened, how that occurred, but been kind of chatting with Flint and a lot of the other personalities you've seen this weekend over the last couple of years about how to really promote archaeology, how to promote real archaeology, and how to combat pseudoscience, or at least have an alternative voice to pseudoscience out there, and how to do that in these new mediums like YouTube, like podcasts, like everything else. So yeah, I actually have a new video for the event. I had a new video that just dropped literally 1 minute ago on there. So you can go and check that out when you'd like. There you go. I think I filled the time. I think I did it. Oh,
Good.
look at that. There's Carl popping in.
Yeah, Carl just got in. Let me see how
nailed
to
it.
arrange this with 2 people. Let's see what I can do.
I'm sure we can make it interesting.
No, I mean in terms of how it appears.
Oh, the screen real estate. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I see, this is the problem, is how I look. How do I turn on? No, I don't want to turn off my thing, though.
No, that would be well, there's Carl.
I think we're just going to have to put this on the speaker view, because otherwise it looks really weird. And I think immersive, what does that do? No, God, no.
I'm bringing up the stream on my phone. This is nice.
Because doing that, then no, we're just going to do speaker. So you guys are going to switch back and forth on who shows up based on who's speaking. So right now, Bill's there. Bill, you introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah.
So Carl, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody? And then I'll set our agenda.
You got audio? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Well,
How's
I'm
it going?
Carl Fagans. I'm a professional archaeologist with the Forest Service, and I don't have a doctorate. I work for a living. So that's the old Army joke. But Flint probably mentioned that I've co-founded. I think that's a weird thing. I was just there when it started, the Fraudulent Archaeology Wall of Shame, and then Andy said, "Yeah, I'm done with this," and turned it over to a couple of us. So we still run that.
So
But I've been
Andy
blogging
White and
about
you?
archaeology and pseudo-archaeology for about, almost 20 years now.
Okay. So it was Andy White and you that founded it?
Andy White is the man. He's the man that founded it, yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
cool. Okay, very cool. I tried to get him to participate in this, but he was busy. So next time we'll get him on my channel. Andy's channel is Nobody Listens to Andy, right? On YouTube?
Yeah.
Something like that. Someone can maybe find that and put the link in, because he does good videos as well. Cool. So yeah, this is Carl Fagans, and I wanted him here because he is the co-founder and one of the major people who runs that Facebook group right now, the Fraudulent Archaeology Wall of Shame. I'll put that in the chat if you're into real archaeology. Go join that Facebook group, because we shame fake archaeologists, and we also share real archaeology, and so that's actually really good. So in this sense, I was sort of thinking, look, we got like Bill, who's like one of the key people who has really sort of tried to create this ecosystem which combines archaeologists on social media and some of the more social media influencer type people who are not necessarily archaeologists. They might have some archaeology background a little bit, or they might have no archaeology background and they're just into it, and they do a great job on YouTube and podcasts and stuff. And so I thought, let's think through, what are we trying to do with this event? That's how we should end this, right? We have this great event. We have 60 of us. About half of us are archaeologists in some fashion or another, professional or scholarly or whatnot. The other half are the enthusiasts and amateurs really interested in this. How can we keep this ecosystem together? What can we do to really bring real archaeology into people's eyeballs and ears in these different ways? And so how can we do this? Let's get Bill to think on this first, since he's sort of, in many ways, this event that we're doing, Real Archaeology, comes out of some of Bill's ideas of bringing us all together as a community.
Wow, that's That's really kind of you to say, but I think that there have been, a fair number of people who have been interested in this for years and years. But when a couple of years ago, started making stuff online, I definitely think I was hoping to try and help facilitate some ways that we could do that, because I'd done some research on the way that other communities who had kind of fought pseudoscience in the past, groups who had kind of banded together to combat, say, like anti-vax materials or just anti-science material in general. And there was a lot of talk in there. People, had a lot of success with kind of banding together with people who had influence in these different online spaces and doing collaborations and bringing folks together. So I kind of started putting together like what was ultimately a doomed attempt to try and put together an SAA session, a Society for American Archaeology session. And we ran into, it was actually a great learning experience. I had a whole bunch of people who were interested in doing it. And it was a mixture, like you were saying, of those of us who are archaeologists who might normally attend a thing like the SAA meeting. And, your Milo Rossi's and your Stefan Milos and your Kaylee, History with Kaylee, these kind of great social communicators who aren't necessarily working as professional archaeologists, or maybe just not yet in the case of somebody like Milo, who's just really young, right? Folks who haven't had a chance to, get integrated into that community. And that turned into, one of those kernel of truth moments, like, well, this, accessing these spaces is hard. And that's true. Going to a thing like the SA is really expensive. And a lot of these folks, it was a really international group of people. It was people from kind of all over the world who were interested, or at least, big chunks of the world, certainly most of them outside of the United States. And it was prohibitively expensive to actually get everybody there. And that was ultimately like, art. So something like this, I think that Flint has really been the driving force behind, but a whole bunch of people have helped to organize, works so well because this is free, it's accessible, it's already on the platforms that we have. People with great communities. We can really actually access the people who we need to access, who are not professional archaeologists, but just members of the public who are exposed to pseudoscience all the time, and we're trying to sort of speak back to those things. So I would say I don't know, keep doing this. I think this is great. I'd love to make this an annual thing, but it is a lot of work.
I mean, we even talked at some point about doing it maybe semi-annually. I mean, I think if we sort of maybe have a rotating group of people who organize it or something like that, it could work. Though part of the problem right now, we had Fredrick on, he really took on the big heavy lifting of the website, which is in GitHub and therefore not as easy for people. So we need to think this through, and how to make it. We were also thinking, we were just talking because he was just on, about making it less intensive. I think Glenn is in the chat, and Glenn noticed on Twitter, well, the schedule's not all accurate. And it's like, the schedule's not all accurate for like a lot of reasons. One, we only put this together over 6 weeks, so it was a rush job. Two, because it was a rush job, most people didn't get back information about what they were posting or when until like a few days ago, and we asked for it like 10 days ago at the latest, and including like new signups showed up just a few days ago. And so it's just, and on top of it, we just don't know everybody out there. And then people got confused about time zones. So some people, even though it was said it was the UK time zone, they thought it was US time zone. Other people, even though it says US Eastern time, EDT, like JT, he wasn't showing up for our intro. We had the introduction to Real Archaeology, and I'm like, where are you, JT? I had to call him. He thought that even though it says EDT on there, he just assumed it was his central time zone. And so, like, it's just when you have 60, 70 people pulling something together, well, yeah, it's like herding cats, bag of cats. One of my mods says it's like herding cats, and it is, and it's difficult. And so I think, my entire philosophy to do this, we actually had some people that decided not to do it because they wanted it to be very rigorous and controlled, and like one thing leads to another, and I'm like, look, if we're going to get everybody together, it's just got to be big and messy. And so I would think even next time we go even bigger and even messier, and we have less structure to it. Maybe we just say these people are posting on Friday. That's what I wanted originally. It was like Friday morning, Friday evening, right? And so just something like that, so that it's easier to pull together on the website and elsewhere. And instead it's more like we just all give a shout out to each other. But yeah, I think we need to keep doing these things. And that's where Carl, I think, really comes in handy. Carl, you have one of the more read blogs, I think, out of any archaeologist out there. And the Archaeology Review, and it shows up on like Google News searches even, and then you also have the Fraudulent Archaeology Wall of Shame group, which has 160,000 people. How can we leverage all this work that you're doing, Carl? You're doing such great stuff. You have these great platforms. Tell us, Pesmu, how can you help us?
If you find the key to that magic, I think what we're doing is really good. I think if we continue to use the Real Archaeology hashtag, that's something.
Yeah.
I really like it. I've always been bad about using hashtags and putting those to use and searching with hashtags. But I tried it yesterday. I just clicked on the Real Archaeology hashtag and Twitter. All kinds of really cool stuff was coming up, and I was going, oh, I missed that one. I missed this one. And I think that's maybe just creating that Real Archaeology hashtag that everybody just uses throughout the year. And
yes. That's what I
then,
told people to start doing, is start using this hashtag for a number of reasons. One, it makes it easier to find us rather than pseudo-arcs. Two, it actually starts teaching algorithms that we are related to one another and not related to people that aren't using those hashtags. It adds one extra thing that impacts search results and recommendations on YouTube and elsewhere. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And it's, even, and you mentioned my blog, that's, I've been around for a while, and I don't blog nearly as often as I used to, but, with work and the higher up the chain I get in the Forest Service, it seems like more work I get. And so it's usually on a weekend, I'll sit down and write something, and I won't finish that, and I'll finish it the next weekend or something like that. But yeah, I really enjoy the pseudo archaeology part of it. But I used to spend more time on real archaeology on my blog as well. So I think that's something I need to get back to, but just not enough folks are blogging anymore.
No, but you have a really unique platform, Carl. I'm telling you, out of all the blogs out there, yours consistently shows up in Google News search results.
Yeah,
and
that was always my goal.
And so the fact that you have that, I think you should try to invite more guest posts to make your blog more active, and to really start feeding it into those news results, because it can be, somebody else just starts a blog, great, but it ain't showing up in news search results. If they post on your site, though, some interesting stuff, that'll actually show up there and be more accessible and visible. Therefore, your blog has a certain level of visibility that very few scholarly or professional archaeology type blogs have. And so, I don't know, I really think you in particular, I want to challenge you to start thinking about how to leverage these communities that you have. Your blog and your Facebook group, both of those are of tremendous value to the field and to enthusiasts and hobbyists that are interested in archaeology to find hashtag real fucking archaeology, right? And so you've built those, and you're really successful at this. And so, you got to pat yourself on the back, man. Come on, you've done a great job. And
well, there is another group out there that was just archaeology Facebook group, and there were a couple of us that were all professional archaeologists that were moderating that for a while, and it kind of fell to the wayside. So I'm trying to wake that back up. I went through and cleared out a bunch of old suggestions. We had the question to enter that group was, who built the pyramids? There's only one right answer. So that's how we kind of weed people out.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with the fraudulent archaeology. There's only one right answer, and it's not yes.
Which, by the way, Bill, I'm sorry. So we just put your blog in. It's a hotcupofjoe.net, but it's actually titled The Archaeology Review, and that's how it'll show up on a lot of things. Bill just put into the chat his new video, which, Bill, get back here. Tell us what your video's on so that everybody goes and clicks on it. We should have promoted that right away. Sorry, I didn't.
No. It was set to. I was in the 2 o'clock time slot, which lined up so nicely with this. So I really wanted to stick to the real part of that real archaeology thing. And I mean, if you go and check out my channel, and those who do, and I'm guessing there's a handful of folks here who already follow me. I do a lot of stuff on there, and I do the pseudo archaeology stuff. And I think I've largely made a name for myself as being maybe the person who's pissed off Jimmy Corsetti the most, which I feel proud of.
I don't know. I might be up there too, man.
I know those guys. I'm not big enough to really be like a good clout milk for those guys. So I don't think I don't get shot out as much. But boy, he blocked me hard, and then still talks about me. So, but anyway, so there's videos on there about Hancock and about Corsetti and talking about the Joe Rogan thing. And I have one interview on there with the esteemed Flint Dibble, but I also try and do some stuff that's just about straight up interesting archaeology stuff. But I've like chased those trends, and so I've talked about stuff, a lot of stuff in Southwest Asia, and talking about Göbekli Tepe or Çatalhöyük or something like that. Or
dude, this is great. You're getting all these keywords in here so people find this stream.
Exactly,
Göbekli Tepe,
right?
Çatalhöyük.
Exactly. I love that. But that's not really the kind of archaeology I do. And I joke sometimes with folks like, everybody wants to talk about Egypt. I know about as much about ancient Egypt as like a pretty well-read middle schooler. That's about right for me. I just like it's just not my thing. I'm not an Egyptologist. I work in North America. I did a shout out to JT's stuff because his work and my work are kind of closer than most, right? We're working kind of in the same part of the world, sort of east coast of the US, though I'm primarily historical archaeology. But I just thought I'd all right, let's do like a basic culture history intro lesson to the archaeology of like southern New England, especially focusing on Connecticut because that's where I work. So real kind of in the weeds. So for those of you who are huge nerdy, I don't expect this video to do big numbers because it's got no keywords in it. It's got no splashy stuff. It's just like straight up for the nerds, for the big dorks who want to learn about a cool kind of part of the world in archaeology maybe you don't know about. So,
but look, Bill, I think that's the type of stuff that can do numbers in our world. It's not right now. Like, I know this, maybe I'm just too much of a half glass full optimist. But like right now, I think a lot of people are interested in things like history and archaeology, and they're interested in the details and the nuance and how experts and professionals, like all of us here and all of us we've had on, how we actually interpret this kind of stuff and how we actually tell stories from it so that they can then, think about it themselves too. I have a lot of people on social media and YouTube and whatever. They're either in related fields, or maybe they're fiction authors, or they're journalists, or they're people that are just really interested in this kind of stuff. And so, I know there's a huge interest out there. Like somebody just said, history nerd here, admire the archaeologist though. And so it's just like, the problem is we have this uphill battle against us, as Andrew Kinkella just said on one of his posts he just made. The pseudo-archaeologists have won. They've seeded all these spaces first. And so we have this uphill battle, but I really think we can do it. And, Milo Rossi is one good example. He has more subscribers on YouTube than anyone else, real archaeology or pseudo-archaeology. And, so one of our goals is we are organizing a workshop together at the next SAAs. And so it'll be me and Milo, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to teach any archaeologist to sign up for it how to do this kind of engagement in a more engaging, successful way. And so I think you are failing already with your video because you're like, it's a really cool video, but it's really boring and nobody's gonna like it. And you have to do a better job of selling yourself, man. Just lie to the camera. This is the best video I've ever made. It's on a super sexy topic, a mystery in Connecticut that people are not really looking at except for me.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that it is like one of the connections for stuff like this is, probably a lot of folks live on the East Coast in the US. That's a big population center. It's probably where a ton of people. And the idea of learning about archaeology and history kind of in your own backyard, and it's not some thing that's super far away. It is a mystery in the sense that people have so many misconceptions and preconceptions about what Native American life was like and what whether Native American people are still around. So I talk a lot in there about collaborating with local communities to try and do this kind of archaeology. Talk about the limitations. Actually, there's a little section in there about, they get into like a little bit of basic theory to talk about how we even define cultures as archaeology, and the limitations of groupings of artifacts and how that's a quote unquote culture and why that's different from an actual.
We talked about the Binford Boards debate on my live stream yesterday, and that definition of culture versus function, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
And that's really like baseline stuff. If you want to get into archaeology, if you can have a good grapple on that, you're going to really be able to just get so much more deeply into it and think critically about it and spot, stuff that's maybe not that accurate or has misconceptions. So yeah, no, you're right. It is the coolest thing I've ever talked about. I mean, there is something to be said for when you're talking about your own stuff. It's fun to talk about Göbekli Tepe or something like, right? But there's no question, if I can get in front of a camera and talk about the archaeology where I actually work, you're gonna see me go like Super Saiyan nerd. Like you're gonna see me go like my hair will turn yellow. I will go power level up because it is actually kind of the stuff I can get into truly into the weeds on. It's not
Yeah.
it's
And
so
look,
that there's
I think in many ways, my advice to all of us is a lot of the times our own passion and enthusiasm can really fuel this. As soon as I start talking like this and I'm really passionate about sharing my archaeology and this stone tool that my dad made, it's like all of a sudden that voice and that inflection and that passion sort of perks people up, right? And so I think that that's really, really important that we all need to recognize. It's sort of like teaching. When we're trying to keep students awake, we have to take the same approach. I say this all the time when I give lectures at universities about public engagement, is we have to take the same approach to public engagement that we take to a classroom. And so that involves that same kind of enthusiasm, some of the same kind of learning outcomes that you plan out in advance and stuff like that. And if you take that approach, you can really have an impact. At least I've seen that. I think I've had an impact. I think that that's the goal. And I know that people like Milo and others who are not academics, they approach it differently. But I'm thinking about framing it, how I can frame it for academics so they understand ways that we can do it with our goals in mind as well, because they'll be somewhat different. And on that note, I want to shift to Carl again, because it's like we're talking about this sort of academic scholarly approach towards social media and public engagement. But commercial archaeology, you work for the the National Forest Service, right, Carl? And
USDA Forest Service. Yeah.
USDA Forest Service. Okay.
Yeah, we're not associated. So you have national parks, and they're Department of Interior, and then the Forest Service falls under USDA because forests are a crop, basically. But I work on a forest that does not have crops. Well, we do, but we're not a forest. We're not a forest that people we come in and do a lot of forestry harvesting.
Okay.
We do when there's a tornado that comes through, and we had two tornadoes come through in 2021, and just you probably heard about that big tornado. It was a mile wide and had a 200-mile stretch in Kentucky and Tennessee, and so we had two of them hit our forest, and we're just now trying to get cleaned up, and we've got a crew. We're trying to bid out to a crew to come in and survey, and I feel sorry for the people who are going to do it, because it's going to be a stepping over fallen logs. Even though they've come in and cleaned up, there's a lot of slash on the ground, so it's going to be a mess. But that's kind of archaeology I do. We do a lot of Section 106, project archaeology survey. But one of the things I've been really pleased with, I started out, my master's thesis was on Neolithic figurines in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, I'm still into that. I really find it enjoyable. The Mediterranean is just, I would love to visit someday, and I plan to.
I'll show you around Greece. Come on.
I might take you up on it soon. But I've gotten into
I'm coming too.
I got to do a tour of Greece for all the archaeology social media people.
But I think, Bill, you're a historic archaeologist as well, and I've gotten into historic archaeology, and I am really focused on the iron industry of the 1850s, and also of moonshine. And there's a local tradition here of moonshine that is just rich and interesting. And we found we found several still sites out on our forest in the woods. Some of them date back to the 60s, some of them date back to the 40s, and they're just fascinating things. I'm about to start some excavation on one of them. So and I'll be at the SHAs this year. I think it's going to be in January. If I don't forget to register by November 1st, I'll be there. So Bill, if you're going to be there, buy you a beer, man.
Oh, that sounds good. I I do have a paper in. There, it's a little bit iffy for me at the moment. I might be presenting remotely. I'm not sure yet.
Oh
But
no, it's going to be in.
hoping
Is it Baton Rouge or is it in New Orleans?
in New Orleans this year. Yep, yep. So
Yeah,
that's
and
Hey,
then
Carl.
SEAC is in Baton Rouge, I think, the following year.
Carl, there's a little question for you. Do you know Catherine Parker, the moonshine archaeologist?
I do. Yes, I met her at SEAC last year,
Okay.
and she's phenomenal. That she is a monster when it comes to publications and work, and just an amazing archaeologist.
Okay.
I'm trying to emulate some of the work she's done. She started excavation in South Carolina, and I used one of her slides in a presentation. You know, they did some excavation during COVID. They're all masked up and everything, but it's I'm hoping to reach her level someday. That's my goal.
Yeah, Nathaniel says he worked on her dig site or her PhD site. So okay, so we have a question for both of you. I guess really sort of for all three of us from Avery Wilson, who we might all know from Twitter at least. Top 3 books to recommend. From me, I'm just going to answer this really simply. I have a few interviews with some awesome authors coming out fairly soon over the next month. Some new books that just came out. A good one that's on the top of my head right now. I just interviewed Raven from Dig It with Raven, and she has a book that just came out called The Other Civilizations. It's about ancient civilizations that people aren't as familiar with from around the world. I think she has like 30 of them in there. It's pretty cool. Now, you guys, 3 books that you recommend for people.
I could throw one out there. I talk about a couple of books in the video that just launched, and maybe I'll plug one of those, especially for if you maybe watch that video and you find yourself at all interested in archaeology in the Northeast or in Connecticut. It's an well-respected archaeologist in the state named Lucianne Lavin. And a number of years ago, she put out a book called Connecticut's Indigenous Peoples. And it is a just kind of walkthrough of the archaeology of the state going all the way back to the Pleistocene, all the way up to the present, so the last 12 plus thousand years. But also is really an amazing book about that the archaeology, that historic period archaeology, where it follows those groups right up to the present and talks about their persistence after European settler colonialism began, as well as their struggles to get federal recognition or state recognition and benefits from that, and their continued the opening of museums and research work in Connecticut. So I'm going to say that Lucianne Lavin's Indigenous People of Connecticut. I'll throw that one out for one.
Okay. Fantastic. Carl, you got a book?
I always try to recommend Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. I mean, it's so relevant even today. I find it in used bookstores for a few dollars, and I usually buy a couple copies and just give them away to people, periodically. And
Spoken like a true
myself.
skeptic.
But it's not a archaeology book. I mean,
No.
So I think I'd recommend. Let me just recommend Ken Fader's new book. I just bought it. I haven't read it yet. You can get I'm gonna stump Ken real quick. You can get 30% off if you go to the Archaeology Wall of Shame and find the post on it. There's a promo
they've
code.
nicknamed you Carl Sagan because you're Carl Fegans, and so they're like, Carl's plugging his own book now.
No, yeah, right, yeah. I wish I was the Carl Sagan of archaeology, a pseudo-archaeology.
But yeah, so check out the Fraudulent Archaeology Wall of Shame and find the post that gives you a discount on Ken's book. Yeah, I mean, that's one of my goals with this channel, is certainly to have on more authors that write for the public, and to try to really make sure that they help find their audiences. I'm now starting to write for the public, so I hope people do it for me. And at the same time, I think it's one way to get out that kind of more nuanced information. I mean, look, videos are great. I like making videos. To be honest, I get most of my information from reading, though. That's actually, when I make a video, it's based on a lot of reading. It's not based on me watching videos. I'm actually really weird to be doing YouTubes and podcasts, because I don't really watch much YouTube or podcasts. I listen to music and read books. But yeah, so I think that's important to plug these books, because especially in the world we live in right now, geez, we need to really get people thinking, and sometimes slowing down a little bit has its benefit. I gotta definitely have on Bill Caraher after his spicy blog post about how the benefits of pseudoarchaeology.
I haven't read that yet.
Oh, you
That was
got to
good.
read that. It's a good one.
Yeah,
We've been
that's-
arguing about this for years since I first started writing on. I've known Bill for decades because he works in Greece, and so yeah, so we've been arguing about this. He actually has really good arguments for some of the benefits and positives of certain forms of pseudoarchaeology in our society, and he's just really quite good about arguing that way. I've been meaning to have him on the channel, so we'll do that at some point, and we'll get into an argument and about that very thing. But yeah, so everybody should read that blog post as well. What's the name of his blog? Why am I blanking?
Yeah, well, I mean, while Flint looks at that, I mean, I gotta agree with that. I think it is, it's something we've all discussed a lot about this. We have this kind of framing of this like conflict, us versus them, and everybody's, contentious. And I don't think that's even remotely all our fault. But finding those inroads and connections is super important. So I thought it was really good. I agree. Great blog post.
Yeah, no, and I think everybody should check it out. And I hope some pseudo-archaeologists check it out and read through some things. I don't know how much inroads it'll make on that community, especially now that my name has been dragged through the mud for all of them. They're all just like, but whatever. And it's not me that wrote it, it's Bill. And Bill considers himself a pseudo-archaeologist as well as a real archaeologist. And so it's an interesting kind of approach on that. And I've been meaning to have him on for a while just so that he can try to make that argument very clearly. Okay, we have a question for you, Farley. Any New England native sites you recommend visiting?
Oh my goodness. So, I mean, there aren't a ton of sites that are kind of like standing structures that you can go and see, like a Stonehenge or something like that. But there's a couple of, I guess the first plug I'd make is there's a museum in Connecticut called the Mashantucket Pequot Museum and Research Center. So that's the Mashantucket Pequot. They're the tribe that own Foxwoods. So that's if you're from New England, Foxwoods, one of the big casinos in the region. But they used quite a fair sum of that money that they've made from the casino over the years to build this absolutely incredible museum that has, it's their own history through their own perspective, but they had an active archaeology program there for like 30 years. So it's all informed by real archaeology and history and ethnohistory and ethnography. It's kind of all in there. And they have a ton of material in there from all those archaeological excavations, as well as sort of recreations of sites. They're kind of the kind of central element of the kind of gimmick of the museum is they have this huge recreation of a 17th century village, Pequot village, that you can walk through. And it's all based on real archaeology that's reconstructed from real archaeology about what the houses would have looked like, the things people are wearing, the food people are eating. It's all authentic, legit, and informed by archaeology. So that would be a cool place, I think. If you're into archaeology and you're in New England, you want to check out a place where you can learn a lot about it. That'd be my suggestion.
Okay, that's a good one. I need to see it. I haven't. I have.
You could also visit me in the summer. I work. I should mention that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
where do we go to find you?
I work at the Henry Whitfield House, which is a house in Connecticut. It's the oldest house in the Connecticut, built in 1639. And during the summer, we have a public archaeology dig there. It's just in the backyard of a state museum, and people come up and put out lawn chairs and watch us dig. And so you could do that. You can swing by next summer and come visit us there.
That sounds like a lot of fun. If I ever get to the point where this YouTube channel becomes real, maybe we'll come film you there.
It'd be cool. That'd be really.
This is my goal. If this YouTube channel does take off, I want to do more in-person type filming, these conversations, but on fucking site, right? That kind of thing. So I have a question for myself that came in that I missed before. They asked about, because I was talking about reading versus videos and audio. Look, so is it okay about learning from videos and audio? I think it's totally fine. I just learn better from reading. It sticks better in my brain. I read a lot faster than I can listen to something. And so it also, I think probably doing a combo of both is best, just like a classroom experience is you learn in different ways. And so having a combo of audio, video, and reading is probably the best way to learn any topic. That said, if this is more entertainment for you, like if you want to become a professional archaeologist, let's be honest, you're going to have to do some reading. If you want to learn real archaeology, that's solid archaeology because you're interested and entertained by it, you can definitely do that without reading. But and whether you're looking at books or whether you're looking at videos or podcasts, you do need to vet the source of the information. You know, this is not a appeal to authority. This is just fucking real. If you want to learn something, you need to learn from people who know what the hell they're talking about. Like, that's just sort of how it goes. That's the only way how it goes. So, you know, this is what it is, and this is why we're organizing this event, so that partly I think people don't always know that there's all these great sources for real archaeology out there. So go on that website, subscribe to everybody, because, you know, they're all good in their different ways. Some are much more on the side of scholarship, others are much more on the side of entertainment, but we're all actually promoting real stuff as studied by professional experts, right? And sometimes putting our own twist on it, but we're never trying to actually, like, most of what I present on my channel is not my own research. It's summarizing the research of my colleagues. Just like when I teach, I don't teach my own research. Maybe I'll sneak a little bit in there, but, like, you know, I'm teaching the consensus of how archaeology is done from all my fabulous colleagues, and all these other channels and blogs and TikToks and whatnot. They're all doing the same thing when they share this stuff. Unlike other communities where they actually think that what they're doing is putting their own interpretation on, despite the fact that they're not experts and they have no experience actually doing archaeology. That's what makes a pseudo-archaeologist, right? This is my next solo live stream will be, what is pseudo-archaeology? And, like, you know, this is a hint preview here. You don't have to call yourself an archaeologist to be a pseudo-archaeologist. You just need to think that your ideas are better than all the other archaeologists out there without having that experience. And yeah, so Carl, I want to get back to you. So
All right.
what I wanted to get from you, which you didn't answer last time, is sort of like, how does your outreach and public engagement fit in with your job at all? Is any of it related to your job, or is it all more just a hobby and an interest for you to reach the public about archaeological topics of interest?
Both, yeah.
Okay.
All the pseudo archaeology stuff I do online and through the Fraudulent Archaeology Wall of Shame. I mean, I've got, and I'm starting to delve into the video game, you know, because I see myself retiring in about 10 years. But right now, I'm just so daggone busy. I can't even, I've been scripting a video on dodecahedrons. I just looked up at my whiteboard.
I know who you should talk to. I know who you should talk to. When I was at Newcastle giving a lecture a few months ago, and I met a PhD student, and her entire research is dodecahedrons, and she's very pissed off about how they're framed in the media. It's like a big problem.
I'd love to talk to her. Yeah.
They're very cool stuff, but she hates how they're portrayed in the media. So she'd be someone you should talk to. I can put you in touch with her if you want some inside knowledge from somebody who studies.
I've got a video 90% scripted, and then just on the history of how they were found and some of the hypotheses, and I think it's a genuine archaeological mystery, which is, you know, people like mysteries, and but I don't think it's as, you know, it's not magical or there's no aliens involved. I like these little you know, these dodecahedra. So I've been working on that for a while, but I mean, I've been working on it for over a year now, you know, and I'm just swamped at work. I mean, I'm trying to get a lot of reports written and things like that, and so it's nuts, you know. But I'm also working on a book on pseudo archaeology. I started working on it before the COVID, and then sitting at home every day, working at home, and then sitting behind a computer and thinking about a book. I was like, I'm going to the couch. I'm going to go do something. I'm going outside, going for a walk. I'm going to do something else. So now I've picked that back up and looking at it, and I've got several chapters already kind of, you know, lined out, but I think I'm going to rewrite because I've got some new ideas. Some of that is based on some of the work you've done. I like the idea of pre-bunking, and I've always had the notion that I would write this and I would talk about these pseudo-archaeological sites, and I would end it with, I didn't want to just debunk something. I wanted to end it with, here's why this site is cool. Like the Bosnian pyramid's a good example. It's not a pyramid, but there's some really cool stuff going on there, and here's what it is. And then leave with the real archaeology at the end of the chapter or into that section. And so I've got some, and I've been wanting to do this focus on the 21st century, and not just something that Ken's already done. He's got a wonderful book. I wanted it to be a departure from that and be something really very different than what Ken Fader's done. And so I thought I'd talk about Atlantis, but only in what if people are doing in the 21st century, you know, like the guy that thought he discovered it, that works for a satellite company, and it turned out it was I don't know if you ever read that blog article on my blog, but it turned out to be a biological control site that they planted things, and he found these kids circles. I found out what it was in like 10 minutes. I'm like, this guy couldn't figure it out in 10 days or 10 months or whatever, working on it, you know.
Oh,
But
God.
so I'm working on that, and but I do a lot of stuff through work as well. So I do the moonshine archaeology thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then the iron industry. I give presentations around locally to school groups and historic societies, and the moonshine archaeology thing. I actually went to a distillery, a moonshine. They make a traditional kind of moonshine there, and I made friends with them. And not a lot of people showed up because we didn't market it very well, but I did a well enough job. They gave me a $60 bottle of booze, so that worked out pretty well.
All right. So tell us a little bit about the archaeology of moonshine.
But yeah, I'm always doing things. In fact, this past week, I spoke with kindergartners. I'm going to tell you something. That is the best group. Kindergartners, preschool, and first grade. These folks have only got about 5 years to be polluted.
Huh.
They don't know ancient aliens, and my goal was just if I said, okay, at the end of this, there's a pop quiz, and I gave them the answer at the beginning. Archaeologists don't do dinosaurs. And so at the end, I gave them the quiz. They all passed. So I'm putting out there new groups of kids that know what archaeologists are. But I asked every one of them, you know, do you know what an archaeologist is? And always about 3 or 4 kids raised their hands, and their answers are really good. They're people who investigate. They're people who look at things. They study rocks. I mean, these kids were thinking, and I was amazed. And for people who only been speaking English for about 5 years, it's great.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, Carl, I've done an outreach thing through my university for a few years where I put myself out to like school groups, and I've mostly talked to like 3rd, 4th graders, maybe 20 or so times. And boy, is it it's first of all, it's extremely fun. And it is, they just have like these incredible, and working in the field too, like on a public site, we have school groups who come up. There's a preschool nearby. They always come out, and the kids always ask great questions. One of them really smoked me this summer. I got, sort of talking to them, and my students are like 12 students behind me. They're all working, they're all digging, they're all screening, they're doing real stuff. And I'm just chatting with them and like barely looking dirty at all. And one of the kids just raised their hand. I was like, well, yeah, what is this? This is a preschooler. It's like literally like I don't know, 4 or 5 year old. And she just says, so what exactly do you do around here? And I was like, I supervise, kid. All right.
That kid is the future Jimmy Corsetti. Look at this picture. They're not digging. Oh my God.
Somebody's got to be here to talk to you, you little snot nose. She was the sweetest kid. But I think the students who could hear were just cackling. They're like rolling around in the units. She smoked me.
Yeah, a lot of my public engagement started. We had this program when I was a grad student where we go to like local schools or retirement communities, and the retirement communities were the best crowd. Because you get there, you're an archaeologist, and you're putting up all these pictures basically of trips. And so they're just like, hey, this is what we do. We show each other like, photos from the trips we go on. And so like, they're just enraptured by the pictures. And so they just ask questions about the pictures. They also have they oftentimes like to talk about their own trips to similar places as well. And, but the younger kids are also fun because they're always so curious, right? But one of my first ones I did, it was, I study food, so it was about the archaeology of ancient food and stuff like that. And at the end, I got this question that I still remember, and it was just like, so, how did they live without air conditioning? It's just like, what? How did they live without air conditioning? And you know what? Now that I think about this, I think this explains so much of pseudo-archaeology. It really is this thing that we're so used to having our own technology that we cannot conceive of a world without a crane lifting something, without, like all this kind of technology that we're used to. And it's just a total lack of imagination because we have all this technology and that's how our world works. how could they do that in the past without similar technology, you know?
Well, I do a thing too with homeschool kids,
Hmm.
and so we have a nature station, and we have another place. It's the 1850s home place, and so they do educational outreach at both of them to different counties because we're fairly not a huge forest, but we span a couple of counties, and so I had a big poster set up and a stratigraphy board that kind of shows stratigraphy and ages of things. And I was talking about human migration one day. That was a huge hit. And it's a really complex subject where you can start talking about ancient DNA and things like that. And you can get really complex with it with the public, but you can really dumb it down with kids if you're careful. And so I would get these kids come in and I would ask them, well, how far did you walk to get here today? And they would say, well, we just came from the parking lot. I mean, you didn't walk from your home? Like, no, that's too far,
That's
and I
too
would
far,
start talking.
exactly.
Can you imagine walking from Alaska to here or from Asia to Alaska? Or, and I'd show them on the map, where we are and where people came from. And just amazing reactions from kids. And then I would teach them a new word, the Ipiquera, the tribe in Amazon that has that DNA signal. And the parents all love that, and of course, you got the parents that are bringing their kids because, they're homeschooling because, they don't want that evolution taught to them. But yeah, I go there and I pollute their minds with, people have been around for a few hundred, 10,000 years or 12,000 years or
Yeah,
whatever. But it's a lot of fun. And I had some parents that really got into that.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, that's one of the things is I've talked now to people of every age and every
yeah,
ethnicity in different countries. And, people really are fascinated by what we have to say. And like, but I think the biggest issue is they don't really know what we do. And so they don't know what to look for
right.
or even really what to ask. They just ask about pyramids and stuff like that. And it's just like, well, man, that's not what archaeology is about anymore. I mean, don't get me
We can
wrong.
be our
There's,
biggest enemy
huh?
when it comes to, we can be our biggest enemy when it comes to public outreach. We
Yeah.
we write books that cost $75, $125. Nobody's going to buy that. We write papers that are paywalled. We write stuff that goes into gray literature. I do. I've got publications that nobody will ever read except the state historic preservation officer. And I put some of my best work into that.
Yeah.
I sweat over this stuff, literally.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to read it. It's just I think I've got one peer-reviewed publication, and it's not even on archaeology necessarily.
And we just have and what's so amazing is we have such interesting stuff. Like it's hands-on, it's visual,
Yeah.
it's something it's auditory. We have all this kind of stuff, and it's just like it's waiting for us to share it with the public, and the public wants it. A lot of them really do, and so I just think we really need to keep building this kind of ecosystem and keep shouting it to the rooftops as best we
Yes.
can, just one step at a time. I mean, that's why I was saying to you earlier, you've been doing this for a while, and like I know at times it can feel hopeless, but man, you've put together something that really has influenced algorithms themselves, and you
Well,
got to leverage.
I want to thank you and Hoops for the opportunity to do that one article in the TSAAR or TSAR.
Yeah, the archaeological record. Yeah.
And nobody all the pseudo archaeologists don't get that. We weren't writing to them. We were writing
No, of
to
course
other
not.
archaeologists.
Well, and
that
that's
was
part
our-
of the problem with the internet, which is something that maybe we could end by talking about, is this context collapse. Where like if you want to have an impact, you write or present towards the audience that's there, right? So we are talking towards the audience that's here, the 150 people who are actually interested in hearing this. But of course, there's a few people that will watch this afterwards or whatnot that will hear it and listen to it, and the context to which we're presenting they're coming at it from a very different context, right? And so how do we actually address that? Because I think that that's one of the most difficult challenges, we have to be hyper aware of our audience. And so, you know, when I'm on Joe Rogan, I'm going to say something very
Yeah.
different than when I'm in a university classroom. That's not because I'm lying in either case, it's because it's a different context, a different group of people with a different background. But the internet, what it does, because it makes everything available, all of a sudden, even though you have this context of this live stream here, it will be deployed to all these other contexts as well. And so I'm wondering what you guys think about that challenge, because it's a real serious challenge, and I think it's where a lot of pseudoscience succeeds, by stripping things out of the context they're in and repositioning them or retwisting them. And so I'm wondering what you guys think about this tricky topic.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, and I think, you know, building off like what Carl was just saying, some of these challenges are, there's a double-edged sword. It's like a challenge and a benefit. Is as archaeologists, there's like labor and systemic issues at play here, right? And it's very difficult if you're working as a professional archaeologist, whether it's in academia or CRM or working for state or federal agencies. You know, those are all pretty busy jobs, and finding the time, like I do this, like my stuff in absolutely just like my spare time, and it's tough to keep that motivation to do that. Like, you know, Carl said before, it's I got to sit down and write this thing, and that is a real huge challenge. It also means we're constantly speaking to different, as you were just saying, Flint, different groups of people. You know, we've talked about preschoolers and kindergartners and fourth graders and college students and folks who are just want to watch videos on YouTube for entertainment or because they find something interesting, and people who are in retirement homes, right? All ages, all different kind of education levels and backgrounds and particular types of interests. And we tend to be pretty good at that as a community, right? We all know how to do that. And that was a bit of advice I saw somewhere along the line, or was when you're working on a medium like YouTube or something like that, you know, the people who are really successful are the people who know how to bring their, this is not exactly answering your question, Flint, so I apologize, but,
No,
but it's, I swear I'm getting there, I promise. There's like, is to bring your own skills, right?
Mhm.
So my skill probably is I can just like talk to folks in front of a room or in front of a group of people and answer questions stuff for hours at a time and make it sound interesting and passionate, because I'm a teacher. It's what I've been doing for half my life at this point. And so I try and bring that. Other people get into these things and they went to film school or something, and so they know how to edit video. They know how to make something engaging in that way. Maybe they're not great public speakers, but it doesn't matter because they can use the powers of Adobe Premiere to make their stuff funny and interesting and engaging. And sometimes you have all those skills, like that bastard Milo Rossi, and he's just that little. No, we love Milo around here, but kids just got talent.
Milo's not welcome here.
Yeah, you don't build millions of subscribers and followers without just having that raw talent too and passion, right? But that's sort of infectious. But this is and I don't know if I have a solution here, but it leads to the same problem you were just talking about, Flynn, is that even if we're doing that, we're successfully jumping between these different audiences. All of that material is there and present, and you can't have bad actors who can kind of grab from one place to another and say, it's just like there's probably a whole book to be written about the way in which people took things you said in the Joe Rogan interview and tried to turn them into devious lies when they're just not. They're either you know, saying something off the cuff. In many cases it was just like you were saying, sort of, you have to say things with a little less nuance when you're talking to an audience of millions and you have 10 seconds to describe something. That's not lying. That's engaging with the audience.
Like if we want to get into this, literally they pull out like 5 things. Only one of them is actually a factual error. Like they are literally just twisting shit. Like the ice core thing is a perfect example. I'm sorry, but the ice cores clearly do not show any evidence of global advanced metallurgy in the Ice Age. And in fact, with the studies we've done, they rule that out as a large-scale global Ice Age, you know, metallurgy. Like, this is them just making up shit when there's nothing there. Like, I will admit, now this is going to be totally taken out of context. I can't say this. No, I can't. No. Off screen, I'll tell you what I could say, which is that these guys are idiots because... they're just idiots. They don't know archaeology at all. And yeah, I made that one error with the number of shipwrecks, but like it had nothing to do with what I was talking about. Like it's like I was talking about the evidence from the Ice Age and the evidence for agriculture. They're not even trying to hit my real points, and like don't get me started on the rate. Whatever. The point is of course
I didn't mean to get you fired up.
No. But the point is that's a good example of how people will just twist stuff. But I didn't even necessarily mean that by context collapse, because that is true, but that's just bad faith. Okay, that's just people purposefully trying to attack me and make me appear like shit. Thank you, dude. I really appreciate it. And so that's just totally bad faith. And that's something we can't. One of the arguments I try to make to everybody is we have to stop overthinking things about that bad faith stuff, because they're just going to find stuff no matter what. So whatever.
Learning the difference between good and bad faith engagement is so important, and it's something I've struggled with. And I know like criticism I've received from within our community is, there was a time when I was like, I just would get really angry and I'd like argue with people online, and I just like, there's somebody wrong. I was that meme. There's somebody wrong on the internet, and I had to like argue with. And it was a waste of my time and my energy that I could have been spending doing something good. So learning this is bad faith, I don't need to engage with this.
Yes.
It's such an important skill, but that's so, and I'm trying to, it's not an easy skill to learn. It doesn't come naturally, at least not to me. So that's a good one to practice.
No, for sure. I mean, like as soon as somebody's bad faith, just block. There's no point in engaging. The only reason to do that, and what I'm trying to convince everybody on Twitter and elsewhere, is to stop getting into back and forth arguments, because nobody sees those. If you look at the number of views on a back and forth argument, you say, oh, I'm trying to expose this person as bad faith. And it's like, nobody's watching your back and forth, okay? Like, it's just not being seen at all. And so
I'm fully willing to admit, they just made me angry and I get mad.
I know,
like,
dude, I used to do this too. I used to do
so it's
this
like,
too.
I don't think it's like hurting anything, but it's not helping anything
and it's
either.
hurting your time and stress because you're angry. Yeah. And so, but the point is there's no real justification for a back and forth. If you actually want to address some of the points people make, create a thread, create a video, create a blog post, because that actually gets more visibility. And don't get me wrong, we don't get Milo Rossi's visibility. We have 150 people here, not 1,000, 10,000 at a time, right? But at the same time, this will be seen afterwards and people will see it. And so it will get some visibility. And when you actually do build something, people do come. And that's what I was trying to make about Carl's blog. Like, he really did. I'm sure there were many times where that was a slog and he was not as pleased, but dude, now it's one of the most visible archaeological publications on the internet in text form. And so it's like, that took years of building one step at a time. And, I see people talking about Dr. David Miano and like other people, they've built this stuff one step at a time. It's why I'm starting to do more of it, because I'm realizing, some of this is a slog. What I've moved away from is the really high production videos, because that just takes too long. And if you can't predict that it'll be successful, it's not worth it until you have the audience. But this kind of casual conversation, which, like you said, I'm a teacher. I do this all the time, right? I do this with colleagues all the time. I do this with students all the time. This is my job. I just sit here and talk. Like, that's like half of my job. I direct projects in the field, and it's like, all right, we talk about a decision that trench is going to make and how we're going to excavate it. And like, that's half of my job. And so this is easy to do. In a sense, it is also a lot of work and whatnot, but I meant compared to producing a very high quality video. And so I think we just have to keep putting one step forward. And one of my arguments here, it was for the real archaeology thing as well, is many of us should be focusing on low effort things. I've noticed you start trying to film your videos in just one take, that kind of stuff. You say that. We have to promote that, especially among those of us with jobs and that have other things going on. If you're a professional YouTuber, do what works for you. You have your magic. I'm not trying to address professional YouTubers here. That's the context collapse, right? So, but for people like Carl, people like you, people like me, I'm in a middle sphere because I have a part-time job right now, so I can actually devote some time towards growing this channel and trying to turn this into something legit. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, I still have academia and I can apply for jobs and stuff like that. And so like, but I definitely strongly believe that those of us with expertise and professional skills, we should be relying on them and trying to put out a lot of content without as much effort so that we can slowly build this ecosystem one step at a time. Just like Carl has done and others. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no, as Carl mentioned the video game thing before, and I got all excited because, like, if some of my early videos were like on archeo gaming and video games and stuff, and I find that stuff super fascinating. And I made some videos. They were very inspired by YouTubers who I like were not archaeologists, and they took genuinely some of those videos took like hundreds, like over 100 hours to make, and they're super high effort. And I'm very proud of them, and they have like 600 views. And it's as opposed to I could sit in front of a camera and say I'm going to talk about preservation for 10 minutes, and that video will get 10,000 views. It's like, and that's okay. It's okay to do both, right? Like, but
Exactly, and that's the thing. You're doing this in your free time, so you should be doing stuff that also makes you feel good. That's
I
important.
wish I could get 10,000 views.
Huh? What do you say?
I would like to have 10,000 views. I mean, that'd be.
Well, look, it's a different
I've only
economy
got
for
3
blogs.
videos up.
Yeah, it's such a mystery to me. Like, we all can argue, we all spend a lot of time and energy arguing about like the YouTube algorithm. I have no idea why one video gets 100 views and another gets 50,000. I don't know. And yet that does, I know, Flint, you've experienced that too. And it's like, you think you've got a good hook, you've got a good idea, you've workshopped it with friends who know what they're talking about, and they say, yeah, it's going to be a great video, that's going to do real well, and it just doesn't. And then other stuff that's like, yeah, you do kind of off the cuff and it gets tons of views. So I think another thing would be a suggestion for folks doing this is try not to worry about that stuff. If you just keep making stuff and you're passionate about it and your passion shows through, it will start to catch on. Some of them will hit, some of them will miss. It kind of doesn't matter. Think that long game, think that long game.
And I think the
Bill,
key,
I think if I were you and the work that you're doing, the historic archaeology, I would try to shoot as much B-roll as I could and have a video camera going or a GoPro going all the time. Andy White did the trowel cam thing one time where he attached a GoPro to a trowel. Oh, that was awesome. But I would do little things like that, get B-roll, as much B-roll as you could, and then go back and then edit and then talk about some of the methods. And you looking at, you got some B-roll of somebody doing some doing the thing where they're dating the stratigraphy, and they're trying to get some OSL dating or something, or it's some thermoluminescence dating, and they're trying to do it in dark, and you can explain that methodology to them on a sidebar, and then you got the B-roll to go with it. That's some fascinating stuff, and that's real archaeology. I think that blows stuff out of the water. I mean, it's so fascinating. There's nothing like that on the internet. I always try looking for stuff of people doing archaeology with geophysics, because I'm interested in that, and I've been wanting to buy. We've got a weird thing where we have access to some money that a lot of forests don't, and I've been wanting to buy a Fluxgate gradiometer or something like that. And I've been researching a lot on how to use that stuff. And there's a little bit of it on the internet. There's not a lot of the theoretical approach to it and the methodology and stuff. And I think that would be just fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also another thing here is it's about building it. And so, the more B-roll you get and stuff like that, you could just publish it as kind of like that kind of thing that Carl's talking about. But one of my goals, I definitely want to start producing higher quality videos again once we build up more of an audience where they might find that. And so I think that like all these interviews I do, God, I could start splicing them into like documentary type stuff, just like Stefan Milo makes with his videos. He does a little video interview with a scholar, but then he creates a larger narrative around it with high quality footage and stuff like that. And so that's sort of what I see this as, is like it's producing content, which is great. It's building up an enthusiasm and an audience, which is great. But at the same time, that content can also be repurposed in different ways. And so it's just like that with B-roll footage on site. It's just like with our collections for teaching or for research, we slowly build these resources, and then we can start deploying them repeatedly in different ways, in different contexts and stuff like that. And so I think it's really, the more we just keep doing this on a regular-ish basis, the more of us that do that, we slowly learn what works for us and for our audiences that we cultivate and for the algorithms that influence us and where we're seen. And then, we come together like this in events like this, and then we start sharing audiences and getting everybody to pay attention to all the different groups that are out there. And so that's in many ways what I see this as. And I really see this as something we can do really successful on, because I mean, people really like this kind of shit. Like, you know, they really, really do. I guarantee this video will end up getting thousands of views. It's already at 1,600. It'll end up at, you know, 5,000-6,000 within a week, you know, and so like that's, I think, if I predict it right. And so, you know, that, and then maybe some will go even more. And so I think that there's something there that people want. Yeah, do you guys have anything you want to finish on? And then I'll kick you off and I'll do a little Ask Me Anything with my audience. Tell me.
Well, I mean, Bill plugged a site that's near him that's really cool, so I thought I'd plug Wycliffe Mounds, which is near me. So if you find yourself in Western Kentucky or Southern Illinois, Southwestern Ohio, that area, Wycliffe Mounds is like a mini Cahokia in a way. It was excavated by a guy named Ken Wessler back in the I want to say 70s, 80s, 90s, or 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Dr. Wessler unfortunately passed away the year after I met him. Wonderful archaeologist. But the cool thing about Wycliffe Mounds is you walk in and they've got the excavation open, and they've kept it preserved as if it was. I mean, the units are still open, that kind of thing. They built a building around it to keep it sheltered from the weather. They go in and they dust and they touch things up periodically. It's not a fresh excavation. Obviously, some of the soil stains don't look the way they did originally, but it's really cool. It's a real archaeology. It's an opportunity to see how archaeology works in real time. If you go to Cahokia, they've got a fake excavation set up inside their visitor center, and it's really neat too. But I like the one at Wycliffe much better. The collection of artifacts they have is really fantastic, and they don't like you to bring cameras in. I found out the hard way. I tried to come in and do B-roll. I'm still working on talking to them and let me do some B-roll and do, but their idea is they don't want people capturing images of stuff and then selling postcards and that kind of thing. So I understand it. But it's a really cool site. It's like $5 to get in, and it's an amazing way to learn about Native American history, a Mississippian site here in Western Kentucky. And then also in your not too far from Connecticut is Rhode Island. And I'm from Texas originally, and anything that's within a day's drive is considered close. So I'm sure Rhode Island is close. You got the Newport Tower there. So
oh boy, famous old, that's in Kenny Fader's book, right? The old famous old example of a pseudo-archaeology site.
Yeah, Bronze Age. It's bronze.
There's also New England's Stonehenge. Where isn't that up in New Hampshire? We've got a couple of those.
Yes.
And they're fun places to visit through that critical eye. Yeah.
I would argue that New England Stonehenge is now an historic site, but not for the reasons that people say.
No, it's one of those things. It's like a genuinely probably really interesting 18th and 19th century kind of colonial landscape, and it is fascinating.
Right. I'll let you guys chat. I'm gonna get a beer.
Yeah. Well, here I could give my sort of pitch. Here's gonna be my pitch. Well, two things. Number one is obviously, as Flint said, go onto the Real Archaeology website and sort of follow all those folks. There's so many great creators on there, and one of the big points of this is to try and help each other kind of build those followings. Obviously, you know, to grab the big people, but make sure you check out the smaller people stuff too, because there's some amazing stuff being made by archaeologists and historians and stuff who don't have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of visitors. The booze is coming out. It's too early here for me. But the other suggestion I'm going to make is a broader one, which is if you're really interested in this stuff, find a way to do some archaeology. There are more opportunities to do that than you think. If you're in the U.S. at least, and that's the area I know the best, take a look and find out if there's a state archaeological society in Connecticut. It's the Archaeological Society of Connecticut. It's usually called something like that. We also have a group in Connecticut called FOSA, the Friends of the State Archaeologist. Our state archaeologist doesn't have a staff, so she's basically staffed by volunteers, mostly older folks, people like in their 60s and 70s, but it's open. She has excavations all year round, and they need people to help. And that's who does it. It's just volunteers, folks who are just coming out and doing it. Avocational archaeology is a real thing. Some of the best archaeologists I know have never been paid a dime for it in their lives. And other people who have become professional archaeologists who started out just as avocationals, taking a field school, look into local field schools or field schools that are in a part of the world you're really interested in, Greece or whatever, and maybe take one of those. Those might cost some money, but sometimes locally they might not cost money, or they might be really affordable. So I really think like getting out there and actually doing a little of archaeology will inoculates people against some of the bigger bullshit claims of pseudo archaeologists, right? There's all this kind of like archaeology is gate kept. They don't want you in. And of course, all those things have kernels of truth in them, but it's also kind of not. You can just get out there. Somebody will hand you a trowel and just have you start digging a hole. And it's amazing. You're just doing it. You're doing it. And from there, you're engaging with it in a whole new way. Then that's goes beyond just, watching videos or reading blogs or whatever. So that's my final advice, I'd say. Go do some archaeology.
And if field work isn't your thing, there's also museum opportunities or looking at artifacts. There's labs, there's universities that need cataloging of stuff. Like, really the best advice I always give people, if you're really interested in archaeology, look up local historical societies or local museums or different things like that. I guarantee wherever you are in the world, you can find something local. And if you go up and you say, I'm interested in volunteering and learning, people will say yes. I've worked with, I don't know how many hundreds of different kinds of volunteers from all kinds of walks of life, different ages from, 15 up until 80. And, and I mean, this 75-year-old lady, she was a badass. She's like hauling buckets and wheelbarrows and everything. She's retired and she's like, I love this shit. She's like a little old lady. And, and she's taking grad classes. She's auditing grad classes because she's so interested in it. And it's just like, yeah, it's never too late. And it's definitely a very doable thing to do.
I think you hear the pseudo-archaeologists always complain about archaeologists being gatekeepers, but man, there's not a lot of professions out there where you have avocationalist archaeologists invited to come in and volunteer, and we do. I mean, big time. There aren't any avocationalist airline pilots, as far as I know. Not many avocationalist heart surgeons. These guys are, you come in and you can't volunteer to participate in those sort of practices, but archaeology is certainly, we can come in and start you off slow. You're often carrying a bucket of matrix to the screen, but from there, that's where the discovery begins. You start screening dirt, you find things, and it's a wonderful feeling to just find your first, bifacial point in a screen full of dirt. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
So get out there and do that.
I fully agree. All right. Well, I think that's a good point to end with, you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure I will have you both on again in the future because I'm hoping to do more of this live streaming.
Hey, I look forward to it.
Yeah. And I think beforehand we'll plan out some topics, and I'm hoping to start live streaming at least once a week, just as it's something you can just throw it on. Now I kind of have my setup figured out. I do need a better computer to do some of this at times, but overall I can do most of what I want to do. And I think it's easy, and people tune in and they like it, and we can have conversations with people like you guys. Can
I make a plug real quick?
Do it.
I want to plug. There's so many people out there interested in archaeology. This website correct. If you're not aware of
this is you,
Rick
Carl.
Pettigrew.
Carl, you're lagging really badly, and it's not me this time. So
how about now?
Now it's much better. Yeah.
Okay. If you're not aware of Rick Pettigrew, he's got a site called the Heritage Broadcasting Service. Wonderful site. It's archaeology and anthropology's answer to the History Channel. It's not available anywhere but Roku. If you have a Roku device or a Roku TV, search in the search bar for Heritage Broadcast Service, and you can sign up. It's like $6 a month, and it's wonderful programming. You can travel the world through some documentaries that you would never see otherwise. It started out during COVID. Rick Pettigrew was running this film. What do you call those? When people get together with their film awards, that kind of thing. But he had God, the word is escaping me right now. But anyway, they couldn't do it during COVID, so they went online and created this heritage broadcast service, and it took off somewhat. But now it's kind of reached a point where they've got about 400 titles or so. But go online and check it out. It's heritagetac.org. Heritagetac.
Yeah, I already put it in the chat. It's all good.
Yeah, it's a wonderful site. Great documentaries. Everything you wish the History Channel would be for like $6 a month. It's $6 well spent. You're not gonna regret. I watch it probably 2 or 3 of those a week, and they're fantastic.
Okay.
So Rick Pettigrew. He's also got an archaeology. He was doing podcasting before they even called it podcast. So you can check out the Archeo channel or Archaeology News or something like that. It's really cool. They do it every week or two. They put it out, and all the newest archaeology all across the world.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody should check that out. The Real History Channel. Bill, you have any last notes?
No, thanks for this great chat. I just dropped it in chat, but to say just a personal thanks to Flint and Frederick and a couple of the other folks who really did a ton of work on getting this.
Laura Tabone from Megalith Hunter. She did a ton. Dan Fallu did some, and JT Lewis as well. But it was Frederick, Laura, and me, I think, did a lot of the heavy lifting. And those three, they're amazing. And all the graphic design, like this behind us, this was Dan Fallu. He did all the graphic design for it. So
these events are a ton of work, and you do end up, many hands make it faster, but you always need that core group that really make it come together. So huge thanks to those folks. If you want to find me, I'm Archaeology Tube in most places except Twitter. I'm Archaeology Game, but that's where you can find me. But so I'll say thanks and sign off there.
Okay. See you guys later. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Ciao.
All right, everyone. And then it's just us. So I will answer a few questions for you all. I've been live streaming for what? Like friggin' I don't know. It's got to be close to 15 hours over the last 3 days. So if you have a few questions, I'll answer a few last questions while I sip on some beer. I probably won't answer any questions about the Graham Hancock kind of thing, simply because I am working on a video on that, and I'm going to make sure I tailor my response effectively to the situation. So we have a question here. Palace of Nestor. I've always been curious, why was that built so far from any citadel or the coastal port, unlike any other contemporary megarons? Paths unwritten. You're wrong on this, in the sense that other megara are also built far away from coastal ports. Like Mycenae is not really close to the coast, and neither is Gla, for example, in the middle of central Greece, nor was Athens. Athens was most likely a very large Bronze Age palace as well in the Greek world. Knossos also is not right near the coast, and so actually very few of these Bronze Age palaces in the Aegean were built right near the coast. In fact, they oftentimes had a separate port. So to the north of Knossos was the port of, why am I blanking on the name of the city? Fuck. This is like something I should really know. But yeah, or Tiryns was the port of Mycenae, for example. So they weren't usually on the coast, so it's actually not that unusual. Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate it. Let's see. What's my favorite beer? These days I'm drinking Guinness. I like Guinness. It's solid. I actually don't drink a ton of beer. I have gout, and so beer impacts gout worse than other kinds of booze. But I used to drink a lot more beer. I like kind of session ales. That's some of my favorite, as well as a good port. I've gone through different phases of my beer drinking. Now I'll just drink a beer or two and that's it at maximum. And I just get what's cheaper, which right now Guinness was on sale. Because, yeah, I'm only working part-time right now. What is archaeology? That's a good question. I wish I knew. Maybe I should make a video on that. It's actually something that could make a good video. Background in philosophy, would love to help you think about your conception of evidence. Let me know if this might be of interest. Maybe, but I'm still always going to take an archaeological perspective on evidence. We have a deep set of philosophy of science related to the field of archaeology, and we have our own history of the field itself. And so sometimes that doesn't always fit in with other fields, but we have our own history and we've grappled with what our evidence actually can say and what it cannot say. And so I think that that's important to recognize. I'm happy perhaps to talk with you about that digital gnosis, but at the same time recognize that I'm here as an educator. I'm here to share my experience with people on YouTube. If you want to talk about the philosophy and different conceptions of evidence, that's more like an academic debate or conversation. But it could be a fun conversation maybe to have on YouTube. I don't know. I need to think about it, and I need to know more about what you're talking about. But at the same time, my main goal is to show how the field addresses evidence as a field and share that with people. I don't really present my own arguments most of the time on YouTube. I present the kind of basic core of what archaeology is as developed by the field itself over the last 200 years. So the kind of stuff I teach in a classroom, right? You know, when you teach an introductory undergrad class, the professor's not teaching their own research. They're teaching what the field does. They're training, that kind of stuff. That's education, and that's what I really do. Would I be interested in doing a pod breaking down my dad's work? Yes, 100%. I've done several Twitter threads on that. I have some videos that I'm working towards on that with some of his former students and colleagues. 100%. He was a great archaeologist and did some really cool stuff. What's the most exciting thing that I dug up, like started jumping up and down? I mean, I guess in terms of like what's exciting for the public, it would be the Tomb of the Griffin Warrior in Pylos at the Palace of Nestor. You should see my video on that, Avery, if you haven't. It was one of the wealthiest finds in Greece in the last several decades. I was in the papers on it. I was field director as a grad student. I was not the director of the project. I was the director who was managing all the field excavations. And I actually personally moved most of the dirt from there. So yeah, I'll stick with that for now. Is my hat Indiana Jones or Phil Harding? I don't know who Phil Harding is in his hat, at least. My hat is not Indiana Jones. This is a different kind of hat. I worked very hard to find hats that fit my head well in my own conception and my wife's conception of how I should look. And yeah. Wait a second. I've lost all sorts of stuff. Where are we? Aha, so paths unwritten. There was a wall, we think, around the Acropolis at the Palace of Nestor at Pylos. In fact, it kind of annoys me that the directors have not published some of the stuff that I excavated as field director. You might see more of that in the future in the news if they ever publish that stuff. I hope they do. They're so busy with the wealthy tombs they have, they forget one of the cool monumental walls that we excavated. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that publicly, so ignore that I just said that. But there's a lot of argument even before that about whether there was a wall around the Palace of Nestor, and I can confirm that most likely there was. Do I have any advice for undergrads who want to do graduate research but are having a hard time finding where to start? I did not see who gave me the super thanks, but I really appreciate it. Thanks, Ford. I really appreciate it. Where am I? Wait, advice for grads. So that's tough. So as an undergrad, I think your first and best bet is to get some hands-on experience. That can be hands-on experience in a museum, in a lab, or on an excavation or a survey. And that, I think, is really important. I think another key is to develop your own perspective on the field, the kinds of questions you're interested in, because when you apply for grad school, you're going to want to know what you want to do and who you want to work with. So you need to get the lay of the field, but you also need some hands-on to develop your own personality on that. And I think that's really important. And just be, you know, be assertive. You need to go out there and get on some projects and get some experience. So email, it has to be something that fits your budget, and it has to be something that fits your interests. And these are all complicated things that vary from person to person. And so be assertive and find this kind of experience and start developing your personality of what you're interested in, and then read widely to find out who the experts are and in which departments they might accept students that do what you work on. So it's about researching the discipline. Definitely talk to any advisors you have at undergrad level. They're going to maybe offer a more specific view, but also talking with other people. You go work on a project, you meet new people, get a wide variety of advice, but always foreground who's there with you, working with you personally in your undergrad adventure. What insight on archaeology did I learn from living in a tent and cooking over an open fire while on a dig? I don't think I really learned much insight on archaeology from it. It's a good experience, and it's a really good community building experience to live in a tent and cooking with a group of people. But I'd be kidding myself to think that us eating modern food and stuff like that is actually learning about the past. So I don't think I do. I already did. So people asked this question twice about my hat. I don't know. Where's the question? Regular live streams. Yes, I think I will continue to do them. We're behind in all my interviews because they take a long time to produce. And so I'm thinking of doing more of these kind of conversations live stream, and it'll be a little more casual, and it'll be engaging and be a little easier to produce more stuff. Carl was drinking bourbon. I'm not sure how Greek communities manage malaria, LA, so I don't have a good answer for you. There's probably been some research on it, but it's not something I've read up on. What all did happen in the Bronze Age collapse? I've actually answered that question a few times this weekend. I mostly recommend checking out what Eric Klein has written, 1177 BC and after 1177 BC. I have a good video with him interviewing him. I talk about my own perspective on it in yesterday's live stream. If you go on the Reddit, Ask Me Anything, that question was asked, and I answered climate change was a major driving factor, and then I answered on the live stream, and the timestamp is on that Reddit. So Daniel, if you go and look at that, you can find where I talked about it yesterday on Saturday's live stream, and you can queue up that section and get the answer to you. Archaeology as a methodology. Oh yes, oddities and rarities. I plan on talking a lot more, and I always do. If you have not noticed, I talk all the time about the methods and how we actually interpret the past. That is the thing that people in the public do not understand, and that is my goal always when talking with the public, is to try to get across how we do archaeology, because that is the most important thing for people to recognize, because yeah, it's not a fucking belief system. There's real clear ways in which we interpret our evidence that have gone through the ringer of 150 to 200 years of people discussing it and seeing what works and what doesn't. I'm teaching this class right now, Archaeological Theory, the history of archaeological interpretation and explanation, and there's a real history there to it, and we know the kinds of things that works and what the limits of what our explanations can be and where we can be more confident or not. But of course, people in the public, they have their own ideologies, and oh, I can take this off. And part of that means that they justify their own beliefs by saying that our stuff is just beliefs. And those people we're never going to be able to really reach, because they're just so... They've been taught this, and they've been taught to have blinders on and to ignore what experts and professionals have to say. And I'll definitely always reach whoever's willing to listen. So I hope that does happen. Thanks for mentioning Rick Pettigrew. Yes, he's amazing. I hope that he does more. Thank you so much again, Ford. Phil Hardy's the star of Time Team. Okay, sorry. Yeah. I don't know. I just have my own style of hat, guys. Where are we? Get more hats. I have two. Didn't I show both of them? Here's my other hat, Johnny Bongo. This is my traditional hat. This is what I wore on Joe Rogan. This is what I've worn for 10 years. It's my waterproof hat as well. It's a little floppy now, but it's still badass. This is my new hat, a little more formal. It was a little more expensive, but it wasn't that expensive. It was like 50 bucks. And we've been looking for like 3 years for a new hat, so I'm glad I finally found one. And yes, I'll get some more. Where are we? It's funny how quickly I got the benign message. I don't know what you mean. Keep up the hard work. Thank you. core pit center and seed. Okay, sorry. So a methodology is simply something that a system of techniques that are used to derive truth. It seems to me that archaeology as a methodology is that accurate. That's a complicated question, oddities and rarities, and requires a long response. In a sense, most of the methods in archaeology actually come from other disciplines. Not all of them, but quite a bit of them come from disciplines like geology or biology or astronomy even, or statistics and stuff like that. And so it's really about how we apply it and how we can interpret it within the context provided from the archaeological, historical, and geological records within which our evidence exists. And so it becomes very complicated, but there are some sets of truly archaeological methods. Well, this is a big debate among philosophers of science. Digital gnosis, you might want to pay attention, because there's actually a deep engagement that goes back to the 60s or 70s, in the 1960s or 70s, between archaeologists and philosophers of science. And so there's actually a lot of literature out there on how our evidence is interpreted and the ways in which our methods are oftentimes adopted and adapted from other disciplines. And so I'm very happy to get into the weeds on this at some point, but it is late and I have been doing a lot of streaming this weekend, so I'm going to leave it at that. Do I think Schliemann's artifacts found at Mycenae and Troy were forgeries? No, not most of them. If anything, he stole some of them, I think is more likely. So yeah. Greeks understood to stay away from swamps. Not necessarily. Some Greeks lived in swampy areas, for sure. Thank you, Arendelle, for popping in the episode with Eric Klein. You're awesome. Griffin Warrior Tomb was me. Yes, I was the field director for the site. Do you ever get to keep any artifacts from dig sites? CRD asks. No, 100% not. Everything I excavate is the property of the government in the country in which I excavate it, and I get to keep none of it. I own absolutely zero actual archaeological artifacts. Every single archaeological artifact I own is a modern replica. Like this was made by my dad. He was an expert flint knapper, and this is the type of Paleolithic stone tool, a point. And so I strongly do not believe that artifacts should be owned privately or ever sold and commodified, because that promotes looting and all kinds of illegal activity, and I am firmly against it. Sometimes I watch popular things like this. Fall of Civilizations is awesome. I want to have Paul Cooper on. I've been talking with Paul Cooper for years. I actually was one of the readers on his latest books, and he said that he'd come on and promote his book, and so I plan on having Paul Cooper, Fall of Civilizations, on, and he agreed. We just haven't worked out a time. We'll do it. Cardiff is a lovely city. It's a little too dark and rainy, but it's a really beautiful city. I really like it as a city to live in. Do I like archaeology in the UK over America? Actually, I mostly do archaeology in the Mediterranean. I teach in the UK. My education is from America, and I'm from America, but all the archaeology I've ever done is from Mediterranean countries, from France to Egypt, mostly in Greece and countries near Greece, because I study ancient Greek archaeology. I talked about climate change, yes. Am I okay? I've received lots of abuse on social media. Yes, I think I'm okay. I can tune that stuff out pretty well and delete it pretty quickly. I don't take these people seriously. I'm sorry. They don't know what they're talking about when they abuse me, and they can kind of kiss my fucking ass. Is really all it is. Not a single serious person who understands the evidence takes any of these people, whether it's Graham Hancock or Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman, seriously. And they develop a coordinated harassment campaign. Kiss my ass. You're not going to fucking make me doubt my own field, my own training, my own education. I've been doing this my entire life since I was a little kid. I'm here to share with whoever wants to be shared with, and I don't think that's stopped in any way, nor have I slowed down. All right, I think we're running out. Am I a Lord of the Rings fan? Yes. And thank you so much, everybody. I really, really fucking appreciate it. I think this was a good weekend. Go check out all the other channels. Share my stuff with your friends. Let's boost all this real historical factual entertainment, and let's actually build this ecosystem and take over the internet. Take it back from these bad faith actors who are promoting BS to make money. Like, look, fuck it, I'm going to make money off of truth. I hope other people will be making money off of truth. We're going to make it so that factual entertainment is the way forward. This pendulum, which has gone all the way towards all this BS, we're going to make it swing back towards real cool stuff. That is our goal here, all right? And I want you all to be sure to follow, if you're still watching, be sure to follow best practices. Like, comment, share. Boost this stuff in the algorithms so that all of the good stuff gets out further. We have to come together as a community to win back the internet for truth and reality and expertise and experience. So rock on. I really appreciate everyone. I hope to see you all on the internet or maybe in person at some point in the future. Peace out and cheers.